Of this leader-to-leader engagement is to also discuss areas where you have strong concern and disagreement. So this is an area where the president has been vocal. He has taken action. Again, in terms of topics that will be discussed, there will be areas where we work together, and he will not hold back, as he never has, on areas where we have concern.
And we will have full coverage of that summit meeting here on Monday and Tuesday. F.W. de Klerk, the last apartheid-era president of South Africa, died at the age of 85. He shared the Nobel Peace Prize with Nelson Mandela, his successor, and spent much of his political retirement pushing back at claims that his realization of apartheid's evils came relatively late in his political career. From bureaus worldwide, this is FSN. Investors on Wall Street this week will be focusing on the health of the US consumer, and some of the major US big box retailers are slated to release quarterly earnings. With the preview from FSN's business desk in New York, Will Denzelo.
Consumer spending accounts for around 2/3 of US economic output, making Tuesday's retail sales figures a closely watched piece of data for Wall Street to digest. September's numbers were surprisingly upbeat, with some analysts pointing to back-to-school spending and more adults returning to offices. But supply chain issues and inflation concerns persist, which could impact October's retail sales. William Denzelo, New York.
The biggest shopping event in the world broke another record this week. China's e-commerce giant Alibaba says its Singles Day sales reached almost $85 billion on Thursday. FSN's Richard Kimber covered that story from our Hong Kong bureau.
Singles Day is a huge marketing stunt in China based around the ones that make up the 11th day of the 11th month of the year. Chinese e-commerce giant Alibaba launched it as a gimmick in 2009. Since then, it's become a retail revelation, involving tens of thousands of brands from around the world offering steep discounts and dwarfing the US Black Friday and Cyber Monday sales. Analysts say this year's record will ease investor concerns over Alibaba's future. The sales surge is also a boost for the Chinese economy, which is growing at the slowest pace in a year amid rising inflation, energy woes, and a deepening property sector debt crisis. Richard Kimber in Hong Kong.
Stories will report in the week ahead. President Biden signs his infrastructure bill into law on Monday and then holds his virtual summit with President Xi. Secretary of State Antony Blinken will visit Kenya, Nigeria and Senegal. And there's going to be a partial lunar eclipse on Friday, the longest one for 600 years. Those stories here and on Twitter at Feature Story. And that is the Week in Review from Feature Story News. Simon Marks reporting.
Good morning. Later this afternoon, I will be engaging in an extramarital affair. Of course, I will wish that I had never made the horrible mistake I'm about to spend several hours making, but sadly, I'm currently too blinded by greed and lust to care about or consider the consequences of my actions. The liaison I will be taking part in shortly with two poor deaf teenage runaways is in direct opposition to the values you elected me to uphold. I also wish to apologize to my wife, Linda, to my two beautiful children, Allison and Christopher. It hurts me more than you will ever know that this scandal will impact your life so terribly. I can only pray that the revelations you will soon hear concerning my fetishes, physical flexibility, and penis will not scar you to the point of dementia. Now, if you'll excuse me, I have to get to the hotel immediately, so I will not be taking questions. Thank you.
This is the Onion News Network.
Free Talk Live.
It is Free Talk Live, kicking off another live Saturday episode of the show. As always, you're invited here. If you want to join us, you can take control of the airwaves and bring up whatever is on your mind. The number is 603-283-6160. Joining you tonight, it's Ian.
And Peakless Mountaineer.
603-283-6160. Coming up, Peakless, you're going to be telling us about apparently a town in California has declared its own independence as its own sovereign nation. I'm very interested to hear that story. But also, last night, we teased a story we never got to, and I always feel like I got to make good, if I can, on doing something like that. And this is pretty big, actually. So you might have heard about the $3.5 trillion infrastructure bill that got whittled down to just a mere $1.2
chump
trillion. Yeah, no big deal.
Only
now.
a trillion.
Right. That particular infrastructure bill was passed, and I don't know if it's been signed by Biden, but it's going to be. So it's pretty much a done deal.
Well, given that he's the one that suggested it in the first place, as I understand.
Yeah. And now that, of course, the bill has passed, people are able to finally read it because, they don't do those things beforehand, because who could? These things are thousands of pages.
Well, that would require that you support Rand Paul and his policy of let's not pass things we haven't read.
Yeah, I think Downsize DC also has been pushing for that for years. But, of course, politicians will never enact any kind of responsible legislation like that.
Well, we have to pass it before we find out what's in it.
Yes. And so now we have discovered, according to dailymail.co.uk, that this new infrastructure package includes alcohol monitors in all new vehicles starting in 2026 at the earliest. Congress is requiring that automakers install monitoring systems in their cars to stop drivers from operating their vehicles while intoxicated. So it's not good enough that this is something that so far they've only mandated on people who've actually been convicted of DUI, after 1, 2, or however many convictions.
And as I have heard that story, it's if you want to reduce your sentence, then you can get this installed and agree to da-da-da-da-da. But this is no longer optional, apparently.
Yeah, now everyone's a suspect.
And just first and foremost, I want to say that I'm totally sure that they will never abuse the power to shut your vehicle down.
Or in this case, it won't even start up to begin with, although I suspect they would be able to do it in transit as well if they determine that you've cracked a beer or something like that. And they actually get into, well, what's the tech going to be here? Like, how are they going to determine? Is it going to be the old tube that you blow into before the thing allows you to start it, or is it going to be something else, something newer? The package is again on the way to the president's desk for a signature. And monitoring systems to stop drunk drivers will roll out in all new vehicles as early as 2026, according to the legislation. First, however, the Transportation Department has to assess what is the best form of technology and give automakers ample time to comply. Department of Transportation Secretary Pete Buttigieg said Monday that the safety programs included in the bill include protecting bike paths and greener spaces built around roadways. Some convicted drunk drivers already have to use devices like this attached to their vehicle's ignition interlock. By blowing into a tube, the system will disable the vehicle if the individual's blood alcohol level is above the legal threshold. So we've heard about that. But this bill doesn't specify what the technology would be required. It implies that it would not be a breathalyzer because the system must passively monitor the performance of a driver of a motor vehicle to accurately identify whether that driver may be impaired. So not enough to just allow somebody to blow into a tube to start the vehicle. They want to monitor you throughout the entire driving procedure. For however long you're on the road, they want to determine whether or not they think you're impaired.
Well, two things. First off, it's a real shame that in, say, 2030, all those political dissidents decided to start drinking while they were on the highway and just happened to suffer those auto accidents by their vehicle shutting off. And number two, I'm totally sure that this will never get hooked into the vaccine passport or the carbon credit passport that will replace it.
Right, suggesting you might need a vaccine passport to even start a vehicle.
Well, you don't have the key to the city. If you don't have the key to the city, you can't drive around.
Why should you go anywhere if
Exactly.
you're not allowed to be anywhere? The Driver Alcohol Detection System for Safety, or DADS, program is a public-private partnership partially funded by the government and is one of the groups currently working on two separate alcohol detection systems that would require no action from the driver. The first is a sensor testing the air within the car to detect a driver's blood alcohol levels. However, in order to work, that would need to distinguish between the driver's breath and any potentially inebriated passengers. So it seemed like that's kind of a no-go from, the start. Like, if you've got people who need you as the designated driver,
well, then you should have filed your paperwork.
That vehicle's going to be full of drunk people, and
you had to file your paperwork in order to be the designated driver
and get the exemption. The second is an infrared touch sensor to detect blood alcohol levels through the skin that could be built into a steering wheel or a start button on the car.
Wow.
Yeah.
So my steering wheel is going to be a vampire.
Well, it's not going to bite you per se, but it will somehow detect alcohol content by scanning you through your skin.
Well, I mean, it's the next logical step. I mean, you don't get to determine what the content of your blood is. And I'm sure that this will only be used for this small purpose.
Oh, yeah. No, they would never use this to detect the presence of anything else that you don't have a prescription for that might happen to be in your bloodstream and completely reveal all of your bodily, internal secrets to whoever it is that's monitoring these things.
If it's one thing we know about government programs is they never expand.
Yeah. And they never keep that information either. They're of course going to it's going to be temporary.
There is no keeping of metadata on the American populace. Clapper told me so. And if he had been lying, he would go to jail.
Clapper is what? Was that the NSA guy?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Who, by the way, was caught lying multiple times and proven to be a liar by Edward Snowden.
You can't lie to Congress. They put you in jail for that.
Not if you're the head of the NSA or the former head.
You mean
of
there's
the NSA.
Different rules for people that run the shadow government?
The president of the Distilled Spirits Council of the United States sent Daily Mail a statement saying, quote, yesterday's passage of this Investment and Jobs Act by the U.S. House of Representatives is commendable and positions the nation to address the 18.4% surge in highway traffic safety deaths in the first half of 2021. I would expect that the Distilled Spirits Council would actually oppose something like this, but no, apparently they're just embracing it. I mean, who could possibly be against stopping drunk drivers?
Well, don't you want your industry to be regulated?
No, I don't.
Well, then how are you supposed to get on the good side of the regulators?
Yeah. He said further, the legislation includes historic provisions to eliminate impaired driving and is a bold step in the right direction. Another guy, Chris Swanger, I guess same guy, wrote, quote, the legislation is a culmination of more than a decade's worth of work to design vehicles that proactively prevent impaired driving. The provisions in this legislation will provide the resources necessary to finally make these vehicles a reality and potentially save more than 9,000 lives per year.
Well, I mean, it's a good thing that no electronic system has ever failed before and that we're so far ahead in our production right now that we can totally take the losses of people being stuck at home.
Now, of course, this only affects those cars that will be manufactured after this particular point. So, of course, any serious drunks will obviously be aware of these sorts of things and just not purchase newer vehicles, unless they're going to start mandating that all older vehicles get retrofitted later on. Who knows what they've got, in store? Because, again, this is still 5 years down the road, but that will be here before you know it.
Wait, you mean people change what they're doing based on the way that they're being regulated?
Yeah.
No.
The ones that are aware of it, yeah.
Yeah.
Now, of course, plenty of drunks won't have any clue, but ultimately this is probably going to get, the word's going to get around, I think.
All of a sudden, the drunk with gloves is not in jail.
It's pretty scary stuff. If you want to weigh in, you're welcome to join us, 603-283-6160. And again, this doesn't mean that I support drunk driving.
No.
It just means I don't support invasion of your privacy. It's not worth it. However many people
And what power have they ever avoided abusing?
I can't think of any. 603-283-6160. That's 603-283-6160. And it also means that everybody who's a responsible drinker or a non-drinker is now going to have to pay to have this equipment in their cars when they don't need it. More coming up.
Looking for a great real estate investment? Consider New Hampshire, which is ground zero for the Liberty Movement. Your first call should be to Mark Worden from Porcupine Real Estate. He's more than just a real estate agent. He's your New Hampshire concierge. Where are the best places to live? Do you want farm, city, the burbs, or forest? Do you want a duplex or multifamily building so that renters pay your mortgage? There are homes in all price ranges in New Hampshire, and Mark can help with financing too. Invest in liberty and property. Mark Worden can help.
PorcupineRealEstate.com. Are you tired of governments murdering people around the world? Stop using their money. There is an alternative. Bitcoin is a stateless, free market, non-political currency. Bitcoin cannot be inflated or controlled by any government. By using their money, you are helping the state. Stop doing it. You have an incredible alternative available now. Learn it, use it, spread it. Get started with Bitcoin at Bitcoin.com. That's Bitcoin.com.
There are lots of ways to listen to Free Talk Live. Our podcast has been around since podcasts began, and now the FTL feed is loaded with content besides our full show archives. Did you know that we make it easy for you to customize your podcast subscriptions? We have different feeds, one that includes only our full shows, one with just the Daily Digest, and our main feed that includes everything. You decide what you listen to. It's quick and easy to customize your feeds at feeds.freetalklive.com. That's feeds.freetalklive.com.
Do you feel like your nation, state, or community no longer holds your values? Have you dreamt of a place where people agree that liberty is important and are free to pursue their projects so long as they respect the property of others? There are many people just like you that are discovering freeprivatecities.com. Their social media links are at the upper right of the page at freeprivatecities.com. All skill levels will be needed when the first of the Free Private Cities opens. It's sooner than you think. Stop arguing and build. freeprivatecities.com.
Free Talk Live.
What's the difference between a stoplight and a school bus?
A stoplight is a light, and a school bus is a school bus.
Full of children. And
right. So
that's a good
the light doesn't have any kids in it.
That's what you call a derelict, educated derelict.
Yeah,
you gotta come out of Harvard.
I'm really not a derelict. I work for a living.
You are an educated derelict. Well,
Barbara,
you know what?
I agree with
Have
you.
fun, play your game.
No.
You're a fornicator, Mark.
When
Barbara.
you pass that next red light, I sure hope they get you good. Now,
Barbara,
hope you don't kill anybody.
I'm agreeing with you.
Oh, she hung up on you, Mark.
But I agree with you, Barbara. I was telling you that I agree with you except for the stoplight thing.
Children, Mark, there's children around. At every red light, you could possibly kill someone.
This, by the way, gentlemen.
If you would run a red light at 3 in the morning when there's no traffic as far as the eye can see, then you would just as soon run over a school bus and kill all the kids inside.
Free Talk Live, 7 nights a week from 7 to 10 Eastern, live on the Liberty Radio Network at LRN.FM.
What if you want to hear the latest episode of Free Talk Live, but all you have is your phone, you forgot to download our archive, and you have no data connection? You can call our Listen line at 641-793-0191. That's a long-distance number, so you may incur charges. If not, listen as long as you want. 641-793-0191. The Free Talk Live Listen line, 641-793-0191. So you've signed the Shire Society Declaration and are planning your move to New Hampshire to be around more liberty-oriented people. Next, sign up for the Shire Society Forum at forum.shiresociety.com. There are a bunch of people there who are already in the Shire, and they want to meet you. If you're already in the Shire physically, you should also come by the forums. Remember, not everyone uses Facebook. New people are signing up for the Shire Society Forum every month, so drop in and say hello at forum.shiresociety.com.
Got Telegram? You can follow our channel there and discuss show prep with other listeners at telegram.freetalklive.com.
It is Free Talk Live. You can join us right here. The number for you, 603-283-6160. That's 603-283-6160. You know, if you want to weigh in on this first topic, you're welcome to do so, and that is that now this bill has been passed. It's going to be signed by Joe Biden, the infrastructure bill, because, you know, who could be against infrastructure? They've now passed a bill that's going to require all cars as soon as 2026. So, you know, maybe it'll be 2027. Who knows when they got to get, you know, they figure out all the details about what technology they're going to use. It's going to require essentially a DUI check in order to drive and continue driving any brand new cars made after 2026, and that's a done deal. This is moving forward. They just have to figure out what the technology is going to look like, how invasive is it going to be.
Yeah, I was going to ask, are they going to immediately do the your steering wheel can tell what chemicals are in your blood, or are they going to wait to institute that for later?
Well, it doesn't sound like this is immediate. This is going to be 2026 at the soonest. And it will be all new cars. At least that's the plan right now in this infrastructure bill. If you want to weigh in, the number is 603-283-6160. Tonight with you, it's Ian.
And Bigless Mountaineer.
And Freedom's Phoenix is a liberty-oriented news aggregation site. If you want the newest and freshest stories and perspectives on current events from those who value liberty, you can find it over at freedomsphoenix.com. They've got up-to-date information on science, technology, historical findings, liberty news, government overspending, and the rise of the police state. And you can also sign up for their daily dispatch to keep up to date on all that stuff. Freedoms with an S, Phoenix.com. That's freedomsphoenix.com. But this is, I guess a little bit of a teaser for the total police state that they are currently building all around us. Some would point out we've been in a police state for a while. It's just coming into full view now with the Great Reset, as it's, being termed, as though these brand new cars weren't expensive enough. Now they're going to get even more costly because every single individual who buys a car after 2026 is going to be, foisted upon them this new technology, even if they've never had a drink of alcohol in their lives. Even if they've quit drinking 5-10 years prior to that, they are still going to be subjected to whatever sort of invasion of their own bodily, if there's any sort of semblance of privacy left in the year 2026, it will be invaded even further by this. And that's, to me, one of the real insults here.
One of the reasons that they will invade your home or pull you over is if they believe that they have probable cause. Mm-hmm. Now, if they start mechanically smelling your breath or taking the chemical contents of your blood through your hands, if you change your diet, you just might get pulled over. There's a disturbance in the force. There's an incongruency with our chemical detection system, so we just had to pull you over just to check.
We don't think you're you today.
We had to make sure it wasn't some kind of Grand Theft Auto or, some kind of cry for help or, just doing our job.
Yeah, there's a lot of really creepy stuff that goes along with this proposal, and I'm sure this is just the tip of the iceberg. If this is one of their ideas, and this is just one section of this $1.2 trillion quote-unquote infrastructure bill, because I'm not really sure what DUI checks in cars has anything to do with infrastructure, but it's typical of the federal government where they call a bill one thing and then it's got 15,000 other completely unrelated things in it. So who knows what other terrible ideas they're going to be shoving down our throats in this case.
Well, you lent your car to your roommate and didn't put him on your insurance, so we smelled it on his breath, and of course he goes to jail.
Yeah, we knew it wasn't you that was driving, so therefore maybe they won't even let the car start if it's not you as the authorized driver of the car. I don't know.
Shouldn't have started eating Funyuns.
The number is 603-283-6160. That's 603-283-6160. Of course, you can bring up absolutely anything that's on your mind. We don't have to fast forward to 2026 to see the tyranny around us. It's happening now. The so-called Great Reset is something that people in the halls of power have been pushing for years. It just came to more public prominence within the last 2 years, what with the COVID-19 being a perfect excuse for them to roll this thing out big time. It's the World Economic Forum, is the group of bigwigs, politicians, and corporate CEOs that want to foist some sort of new economy or new economic model upon the earth. And some people are saying
capitalism has failed, so we need a great reset in the economy.
Well, what is capitalism, though?
Ain't that just the question? Because capitalism, as it tends to be called, this cronyist, protectionist nonsense, yeah, that definitely has failed us. Because
not the cronies.
Yeah, it's failed us.
Right.
Well, and apparently it's failed them because it just hasn't given them quite the level of control over everyone's life that they were looking for.
They got plenty of money out of it, but yeah, maybe not as much control.
Exactly. And one of the things that I definitely see coming down the pike, so right now they're doing the vaccine passport, but
yes,
soon they'll be doing the climate change passport. And I think that all of this is going to hook together. The fact that the fact that your car will be taking a chemical sense of what's in your bloodstream will determine whether or not you have kept within the carbon credits that you've been allotted this week. Or did you eat a burger?
I had something about that whole climate change thing. There was a story, it's not popping up in my show prep at the moment, but that it essentially said they are now saying that the lockdowns are something that should be used on a regular basis to affect climate change, to solve, whatever the supposed issues are with the Earth. Like, we learned during the lockdowns that these are very effective at reducing pollution, reducing, whatever other, here's what we're going to do.
The pandemic was a global problem, and we had to come together as a planet to solve it. And global warming is a global problem, so we need global governance to stop that.
Yeah, and so that's what they're going to be coming up to next. And we're not the only ones who've been predicting this. They're definitely they're definitely telling people that this is part of the plans to roll out climate change lockdowns.
Well, according to our records, you don't have the carbon credits for that extra strip of bacon, so you can't go to work today.
It seems funny now, but it's not going to be funny when they actually do roll that stuff out.
Well, I mean, we have moved beyond the age of satire. Yeah. I mean, every terrible dystopian idea. Yeah. I mean, The Onion, the Babylon Bee, like everything that was supposed to be satirical and overblown and hyperbolic, like you just can't do hyperbole anymore. I mean, the dystopian movement that they have made already is beyond even the imaginings of Aldous Huxley or George Orwell at this point.
Yep. What's the T-shirt? Orwell's 1984 wasn't supposed to be an instruction manual.
Right.
Yeah.
Make Orwell fiction again.
Yeah. The number here is 603-283-6160. That's 603-283-6160. Here it is. Report. This from a little earlier this year. Forbes. Headline. World needs equivalent of pandemic lockdown every 2 years to meet Paris carbon emission goals. See, they signed this Paris treaty, and now we got to do it.
Don't you want to live in a net zero world?
Net zero rights, net zero freedoms. 603-283-6160. You can join us. You can bring up whatever's on your mind and take control of the airwaves here on Free Talk Live.
If you want to bring more liberty into your community, there's something you should see. Intercoin, the movement you might want to join. If you like Bitcoin, break through. It's true. It's truly something new. If you'd like to see real prosperity, start your own currency, boost the economy. Intercoin, the movement you might want to join. If you like Bitcoin, its impact's hard to overstate, results you can appreciate. If you're tired of relying on the state, want to make your own community great, homelessness and hunger to eliminate, let the wealth accumulate. Don't wait for the growth rate to accelerate. Go to intercoin.org and get the coins for yourself.
From Feature Story News in Washington, I'm Simon Marks with the Week in Review, and the week ended with efforts underway to try and save the COP26 climate summit in Glasgow after activists outside the conference and Prime Minister Boris Johnson inside it spent the week warning it was not accomplishing enough. The Prime Minister returned to Scotland in the middle of the week to urge nations to be bolder than the original draft agreement envisaged.
We have to bridge the gap between where we are and where we need to be if we're going to cut emissions in half by 2030. And we need to pull out all the stops if we're going to do what we came here to do.
And outside the conference, activists were activated, among them Gary Jack.
And normally the document that comes out after the first week is fairly hard line, and then in the agreements with the countries it is watered down to a point that it can be agreed. But if that's the starting point where it is just now, I have very little hope.
Monday may see the European Union unveil fresh sanctions against Belarus after another week of confrontation at the country's border with Poland. Belarusian President Alexander Lukashenko continues to deny he's orchestrating a migrant crisis, despite copious evidence that he is trying to facilitate the migration of people from the Middle East into the EU via Belarusian territory. Franek Viachorka is an advisor to Belarusian opposition leader Svetlana Tikhanovskaya. ceasefire.
They bought the tour packages, and right now they are waiting to be delivered to the border. They are also hostages. They are also victims of Lukashenko's regime because they believed he can really deliver them to Germany, but it didn't happen. They just became the weapon against the EU.
President Biden is spending the weekend at Camp David ahead of Monday's virtual summit meeting with Chinese President Xi Jinping. Last week, the US and China cooperated with each other over climate change, but were once again at loggerheads over Taiwan. White House Press Secretary Jen Psaki was asked how forceful the president will be over US claims that China is committing genocide against Uyghur Muslims in Xinjiang.
I would say that one of the purposes of this leader-to-leader engagement is to also discuss areas where you have strong concern and disagreement. So this is an area where the president has been vocal. He has taken action. Again, in terms of topics that will be discussed, there will be areas where we work together, and he will not hold back, as he never has, on areas where we have concern.
And we will have full coverage of that summit meeting here on Monday and Tuesday. F.W. de Klerk, the last apartheid-era president of South Africa, died at the age of 85. He shared the Nobel Peace Prize with Nelson Mandela, his successor, and spent much of his political retirement pushing back at claims that his realization of apartheid's evils came relatively late in his political career. From bureaus worldwide, this is FSN.
Our Matrix server is about as free as internet chat can be. Join the existing rooms or create your own at chat.freetalklive.com.
It's Free Talk Live. Phones are open here if you want to join us. The number is 603-283-6160. That's 603-283-6160. Joining you in the studio tonight, it's Ian.
And Peakless Mountaineer.
And we've been telling you about how Intercoin can help any business or organization launch their own currency or raise money using their own token. And now Intercoin has launched its investor token worldwide, and for the first time you can actually buy it on an exchange. A centralized exchange called xmarkets.com. exmarkets.com. All you need to sign up is just an email address. You keep your privacy intact. They don't need to know who you are, which is amazing. It's hard to find exchanges like that. But that's where Intercoin is locating its Intercoin investor token. You can buy or sell it on xmarkets.com. That's exmarkets.com. What you have to do is you can deposit dozens of different cryptocurrencies, including Bitcoin, trade them for Tether, and then with the Tether that you get on the exchange, you can then buy ITR on the exchange and hold it, sell it, trade it, extract it to your own personal wallet, whatever you want to do, over at exmarkets.com. Look for ITR. As we go to your phone calls, it's Ian and Peakless Mountaineer in the studio. First up, Glenn is on the line listening to KBKW out in Aberdeen, Washington. Go ahead, Glenn.
Yeah, I'm kind of concerned about this apparatus in your automobile. It seems as though if they're going to electronically surveil you, a free citizen, they will require a warrant, according to the Constitution and the Fourth Amendment.
That's an interesting point. In this case, I guess they would argue that by purchasing the car, you have consented to being surveilled constantly.
Which is a strange claim to make, since they are making sure that there are no options to buy a non-surveilled car.
Well, you could buy a used one, at least until those aren't available.
What about free market economy?
Did you say free market?
Yeah.
When did we ever have a free market?
Well, not lately, I can tell you.
Yeah. Not in my lifetime. I would love to have a free market economy where I could just choose whatever kind of vehicle I want without all the stupid mandated government crap that drives the price up of these things. I mean, it's bad enough that inflation drives the price up of everything, which, we can't get away from that until we get out of the government money system. But I don't know how many thousands of dollars extra these cars cost just because of the catalytic converter. That's a government mandated thing. There's probably a bunch of other stuff under the hood that I don't know anything about because I'm not a car guy, but I've heard of these things, and here's yet another one.
What about motorcycles or buses or planes?
Don't give them ideas.
Well, obviously they're going to test the motorcycle through the hand grip instead of just smelling your breath.
Mm-hmm. Well, again, they haven't made the decision yet. So for listeners just tuning in, we're referring to the infrastructure bill that has passed that says that as early as 2026, they're going to require. Just the question is at what year it will be mandated. So they're going to require some sort of ignition interlock system that will block you from driving your car or stop you from driving the car if they detect a certain amount of alcohol running through your veins. Now, whether it's going to be detected through your breath, as far as the air in the car, if that's the case, are they going to make it illegal to roll down your windows? Or they're going to use some sort of other invasive method, like they suggested, an infrared sensor that can somehow read your BAC through the palm of your hand or your thumbprint.
And I wonder how long it'll take them to pass a law that also makes it impossible for you to modify your own vehicle by, say, removing this nonsense.
Glenn, anything else you want to share tonight about your thoughts?
Just that I thought my vehicle was private property.
Yeah.
Wouldn't that be nice?
That would be a wonderful vision for the future. Unfortunately, with the federal government around, no, it has not been, and it is not. They've been mandating all kinds of stuff for decades. And so this is just another thing. Somebody challenges this in court, the government will just say, well, you didn't challenge us when we put in the catalytic converter. You didn't challenge us when we put in A, B, and C, other mandated things on all these corporations. So you have no standing. Case dismissed. Thank you, Glenn. Well, I appreciate it.
Well, and this is just another example of the culture war that we are actually finally starting to fight of, are you government property or not?
Well,
because if you are government property, then whatever your property is, they get to modify at their whim.
They certainly act like you're their property. I mean, right now, I've literally got a government tracking device on my ankle because they've accused me. Just merely accused me of doing victimless so-called crimes. I am being told I can't even leave my house without permission in advance from a probation officer.
Yeah, so much for innocent until proven guilty.
Yeah. Our friend Nobody, who is, formerly a co-host on this show, he would still be co-hosting, except his bail condition, because he was also arrested the same day I was, along with 4 other people for the so-called Crypto 6, which you can learn more about at Crypto 6 or thecrypto6.com. But our friend Nobody, he's not even allowed to be on the air.
Yeah, it seems to me that imprisonment would be a form of punishment after you've been proven guilty of a crime, maybe even one that actually had a victim.
Yeah, and this has been going on now since March of this year. I spent 2 months in jail. Nobody spent 6 months behind bars before they finally let him out. Now, he's allowed to leave his house without asking for permission, but he can't, speak on national radio or local radio or television and can't express himself. So his First Amendment supposed rights have
so
been
much
stripped.
for freedom of speech, freedom of the press.
Let's talk to
freedom
Jay.
to exercise religion.
Jay, you're on listening to WTMA there in Charleston, South Carolina. Go ahead.
So what if I cut my seat belts out of my car and I got pulled for not wearing my seat belt?
Well, that depends on which state you're in, whether you would get pulled for not wearing your seatbelt.
Yeah, if you're in New Hampshire, you would not get pulled over.
Or if you had a car that was pre-seatbelt era. So my question is for you, seriously, though, is I hear you talking about someone might be monitoring this, like the Gestapo, counties, whoever, federal, state, local government.
Mm-hmm.
I thought it was just going to be that your car wouldn't work if you blew into this device.
Well, we don't know exactly what their plans are. They don't exactly know what their plans are. I mean, so far, what we know is they are mandating that some sort of form of DUI check will be installed in all new vehicles. Now, it's not that much of a reach to believe that this will be data that will be sent out from the vehicle to some sort of a central control, whether it be, OnStar or Ford or whoever, or the local police department. Somebody will likely have access to this data.
Well, and for those that trust the government to not assassinate people, then it's very easy to imagine someone hacking into that system and turning the vehicle off while you're in mid-transit.
Other quick question.
Yes, sir.
My first thing that popped in my mind is what's to prevent someone else from blowing in it for you?
It is not going to be well, they've already ruled out that it's going to be a blow in a tube kind of system. So they're going to try to come up with some other method. It could be, as they suggested, some sort of an infrared check. That means that whoever's hands are on the steering wheel will be constantly being scanned for their alcohol level somehow through the skin in some sort of new technology. Or there will be some sort of aerosol device, some sort of air-related sensor that will detect alcohol, that way. Those are the two that the story put forward. But they may have
very
others.
creepy because.
Oh, and heaven forbid you spill your mouthwash before you get in your vehicle, because then you're not going to work today.
Yeah.
I literally have a bottle of Scope in my console. The real deal with the alcohol in it.
Well, that won't be allowed.
Jay, anything else you want to share tonight?
Thanks, guys.
Thanks, brother. I appreciate
Keep
hearing from you.
Work. Keep asking the tough questions, and I'm going to look up this Crypto 6. I knew nothing about that.
Thanks. Yeah, if you go to thecrypto6.com, there's a whole website about it. And I also just posted over at freetalklive.com, I posted a 10-minute long, neat little short documentary that was put out a couple days ago that covers us in, as much depth as you can in 10 minutes. So it's a very, very good, well-produced piece. So check that out. It's right there at the top of the page over at freetalklive.com. Thank you, Jay, for the call tonight. A lot of people have legitimate concerns about this. People that love freedom. Look, the only way out of this is to say goodbye to the United States federal government and say, forget this United States thing. It's a failed experiment. One town in California looks like they're way ahead of the game. And Peakless, you'll tell us about them coming up here. It's Free Talk Live.
I've been told no in many different ways.
I give you an order and you're going to obey it.
George, you can go this way. You can't do that and you have to leave here.
You cannot bring signs into the rally.
Walk with me.
Well, I'm comfortable here, actually. Whoa. Hey.
Who do you think you are?
Excuse me.
There is no video and audio allowed in this office.
No, I have work today.
You ain't going to make it.
Wait a minute.
Whoa.
Hey! Oh my God! Unbelievable!
Why are you running from me?
Because you scared me. What am I being detained for?
You're being served.
What is this?
You're being served.
What is this? Bureaucrats have a funny way of telling people no.
That's the sound of the men working on the chain.
Derek J's Victimless Crime Spree. Watch it for free and order the Director's Cut DVD at victimlesscrimespree.com. The new 4th edition of Healing Our World, The Compassion of Libertarianism, will take your understanding of liberty to a deeper level and has over 1,300 updated references, new cartoons, and a foreword by Dr. Ron Paul. With discounts for multiple book purchases, the 4th edition of Healing Our World is a great gift for the liberals, pragmatists, environmentalists, and Christians in your life who think libertarianism is cold-hearted. Get yours today at healing.freetalklive.com and use promo code FTL for a $5 discount. Tired of cancel culture? Sick of mega tech corporations holding an axe over your head? Join the LRN.FM Matrix chat server. It's self-hosted, so no one else can tell us what to do or say. Don't like the existing channels? You can make your own. You can even connect into some of our channels from other Matrix servers. It's federated. For the full LRN.FM Matrix experience, though, you should join our server via the step-by-step instructions at chat.lrn.fm. Chat.lrn.fm. On Free Talk Live, we're bringing people to the ideas of liberty every day. From wrestling superstars like Glenn Jacobs.
You guys really are having an impact, I believe. Like I said, a lot of where I am now is due to listening to Free Talk Live. You changed my mind on some very important issues years ago.
To random people tuning in on the radio.
I was kind of stuck in the left-right paradigm. I heard your show by chance on a Saturday night. From there, I went on, joined the Free State Project, and become an amplifier. So, I mean, that's really the reason why I amp is because I know that if it wasn't for you guys being on as many stations as you are, I never would have found the ideas of liberty.
You can help more people hear the message of liberty by joining Free Talk Live's AMPS program on Patreon for as little as $5 a month. And you'll get access to special perks. Visit amps.freetalklive.com, amps.freetalklive.com. If you want to know the latest about Free Talk Live before we go on the air, all you need to decide is how you want it delivered. It's your choice. Visit news.freetalklive.com to receive our usually weekly news updates by email. Plus, we have a Twitter account at twitter.freetalklive.com, and you can follow us on the decentralized Mastodon platform at toot.freetalklive.com. So please follow us at toot.freetalklive.com and sign up for our emails at news.freetalklive.com.
Free speech is protected on the internet, right? Not always. Government agencies try to limit free speech and commerce on the net. Luckily, when they do, the Institute for Justice is there to defend your First Amendment right to free speech. IJ helped set the first federal precedent for internet free speech in 1999, and ever since has worked to prevent unconstitutional roadblocks in cyberspace. Visit our website today at ij.org.
You can stick it to the man and big tech. Join our FTL social mastodon at social.freetalklive.com.
Free Talk Live, open phones. If you want to join us, you can do that. The number 603-283-6160. This live Saturday edition of the show with you tonight. It's Ian.
And Pigless Mountaineer.
603-283-6160. Thank you to Jonathan, who is a Free Talk Live Amps member. Jonathan joined our new Amps Patreon as a silver amplifier. We're getting a lot of our old amplifiers from the old system that unfortunately I had to shut down a few weeks ago. So we created this new thing over on Patreon, which has been working great so far. We're over 50 members now of the new Amps Patreon. So thank you to Jonathan and everybody else who's signed up. It's as little as $5 a month. You can use PayPal, debit card, credit card to get signed up over there, and you get some cool perks. You get some bennies for doing that as well. So head over to amps.freetalklive.com. That'll take you right to our Patreon page to tell you more about it and get you signed up and help support what we do here, which is talking about the ideas of liberty every single night, 7 nights a week on broadcast radio on over 185 radio stations across the week. So very, very cool to be a part of this, and I appreciate everybody's support. So thank you, Jonathan, and everyone else who's come on board at amps.freetalklive.com. Let's go to your calls and thoughts. Rob is on the line in Vermont. You're on Free Talk Live. Rob.
Hey, thanks for taking my call.
Yes, sir.
You guys were talking about, this new bill that went into effect and, where it's going to, the police should be able to, pull, people over and stuff like that. But what about this technology that's been talked about for probably about 10 years? Is the driverless cars. There's ones where, you get in a car and there's no pedals, there's no steering wheel. You just say where to go. So if they pull that car over, who's going to be held accountable?
Well, I was actually thinking about that when they mentioned that they would be taking the alcohol level from the steering wheel, because the ones that I haven't really looked deeply into this, but the ones that I have seen, you have to have continuous pressure on the steering wheel to prove that the driver is still there and awake.
You're saying the driverless cars?
Yes, the driverless cars require that. So I would assume that they would just apply the same thing there.
Well, those are the initial versions of the driverless cars. As I understand it, long term they do expect to eliminate the steering wheel, the column, all of that stuff entirely from those that are in the future when they finally get the tech, or at least when they feel like they've gotten the tech down to the point where it's nearly flawless, that they will never need a human to take over operation of the car. And of course, there's a lot of people that do not want to, get rid of their control over a vehicle. But these DUI checks, these invasions of your privacy, your body, just to simply be able to get from point A to point B, are going to encourage people to choose the driverless cars. It's like, oh, well, you can choose a total invasion of your privacy, or you can choose to have a computer take you everywhere and just trust that to work out. Those are crappy choices.
I strongly suspect that just from a technology standpoint, we are nowhere near the car that can take off and land any more than we are near an autopilot that will take off a plane and land.
Rob, your thoughts?
Yeah, well, I think that I mean, the vehicles that I have are mechanical, so I don't know if I'm going to have that problem. I'm going to hang, because I'm an old man, so I'm going to hang on to all of the, stuff from the past that, works for me, and try to avoid any of that other evasive stuff.
Yeah, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. Thanks, Rob, for the call tonight. I appreciate it. The number is 603-283-6160. I suspect there's going to be a lot of people who, 2025 is going to be the last year they're willing to buy a car. And that's not because they're hopeless drunks. It's because they value their privacy. And some people, I know Chris Wade, he's our Friday night co-host. He told me, a few months ago that he no longer buys cars that were made, I think, after 2005. I guess there was a certain time frame in the mid-aughts where they started putting like black boxes in everybody's car or something. I think it was some sort of, privacy invading factor like that. Mm-hmm. And he just, he's a privacy guy. So he's like, okay, well, I'm just going to buy a car from 2002 and I'm going to put it in a garage. And it's basically, I think he's got like the exact same car that he drives, another one of them. So, and he's doing whatever maintenance he needs to do to keep it in tip top shape. But that way, when his car finally, as all cars do, finally dies, he'll just be able to open up this garage and take out the other model of the exact same vehicle instead of trying to go out and get some new privacy invading model.
Yeah, it's not a bad idea. I mean, last couple of times I've gotten a phone, I had to make sure that they weren't 5G compliant. And
really?
Sure, you can get the top of the line not 5G for real cheap. And I have no interest in any participation in the 5G network. I don't know enough about it to trust it. I'm pretty sure once I know enough about it, I won't trust it. And even if everything is completely safe and there's no extraneous dangers from the radiation or anything, there's still just a certain amount of I don't want you to transfer that much information because of how efficiently it will be spying on me. Mm-hmm. I mean, I know you're spying on me, but I'd like you to do it inefficiently, please.
The number here is 603-283-6160. So let's talk about one town in California that may have a solution to this mess. Now, I've only heard the headlines here, Peakless, so I don't know any of the details in this story, but apparently you told me that a town in California has actually declared its own independence, not just from the state of California, but also the United States. Is that right?
As it seems. We'll have to go into this together. I'm trying to figure it out myself. It's a little bit ambiguous with the language.
All right. I'm very interested to hear this as somebody that loves the idea of independence and secession.
So this from KRCRTV.com. Oroville, O-R-O-V-I-L-L-E, declares itself a constitutional republic. As mandates continue to come down from the state, local governments are taking a stand by passing resolutions. 6 of the 7 City of Oroville council members voted to make Oroville a constitutional republic city, with councilmember Chrissy Riggs being the solo no vote. Vice Mayor Scott Thompson, who requested the resolution, says it does not mean they are against laws. Quote, it's just basically drawing the line. It's not necessarily against one specific mandate. We're not talking about one mandate that's been pushing on us recently. It's a barrage of mandates, unquote. Councilmember Janet, sorry, what?
No, go ahead.
Oh, yeah. Councilmember Janet Goodson was the only one to bring up the question of financial impacts, saying Oroville has received about $4.8 million in COVID funding over the past 2 years. She posed the question, will Oroville be able to stand alone and sustain itself? The resolution is not a policy, nor does it change the city's ordinance. It can be modified or amended at any time. Therefore, City Attorney Scott Huber says, quote, as a result, there is no risk of loss of funding with it, unquote.
So they're declaring their independence from the state of California and expecting they're going to keep getting federal funding?
Well, from the looks of it, they are, I mean, if you are a republic, that's it. You're a country.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm actually I'm a little bit dumbfounded on this one. it appears that they are having basically it looks like they're insisting on a voluntary relationship with both the state and federal governments, but they're leaving the window open to going back to an involuntary relationship.
Yeah, there's a headline here that says, according to East Bay Times, Oroville is now a constitutional republic. What does that mean? Here's another comment from Counselor Dave Pittman. He said there are so many rules state, federal governments are attempting to impose. It infringes on both local control and personal rights. He cited ever-changing OSHA rules, the requirement that all vacant city property has to be approved, or development on it has to be approved by the California State Housing and Community Development Department before proceeding, and the state and federal mandates related to masks and COVID-19 vaccines. He said, quote, "We stand by and believe in our Constitution, our republic, and we believe that many times others in state and federal government are exceeding their authority across the board in everything we do. Mandates eliminate personal right of choice to get vaccinated or not, to vaccinate your kids or not, and violate basic constitutional choices we all have." Boy, this is pretty refreshing coming from a city councilor.
Yeah. It seems to be another instantiation of the bottom-up versus top-down. Do you own yourself and then you're part of a community and that community is part of a greater whole? Or is your greater whole owned and then your local community owned and then you owned?
If you want to weigh in on this, maybe you're out there near Oroville and you've got a little bit more insight, you're welcome to join us. Our number is 603-283-6160. We'll dig in further into this coming up in hour number 2. This is Free Talk Live.
I'm crazy about My Magic Mud. This is the most important oral care product created this millennium, and I'm not kidding. We all have different opinions on politics and issues, but we all have mouths. And I want yours to be as clean as possible, with teeth as bright as they were meant to be. I will never be without My Magic Mud. It's a little surprising, but man, does it work. If you only listen to one thing I say ever, go to mymagicmud.com and get 20% off with code FTL. mymagicmud.com, code FTL.
When Monster Hunter International discovers one of Isaac Newton's wardstones being auctioned off, they decide to steal it and use it to destroy the Chaos God once and for all. But a mysterious thief upends their plan, and it soon becomes a race against time as something much older and infinitely more evil awakens in the jungles of South America. Monster Hunter Bloodlines by New York Times bestselling author Larry Correia and Baen Books. Visit monsterhunternation.com for more.
There are basically two types of advertising: direct response and branding. Radio's great for direct response with its low cost to listener ratio, but audio can't be beat for branding, which is a longer-term endeavor. You want to be the first thing that someone thinks of when they think about your product or service. If you have a local business that you want kept top of mind in your community, call the station. If you need national reach, Free Talk Live's got around 200 radio stations, millions of monthly listening sessions, can suit all budgets, and if we don't think we're right for you, we'll tell you. Email me, mark@freetalklive.com.
There are lots of ways to listen to Free Talk Live. Our podcast has been around since podcasts began, and now the FTL feed is loaded with content besides our full show archives. Did you know that we make it easy for you to customize your podcast subscriptions? We have different feeds, one that includes only our full shows, one with just the Daily Digest, and our main feed that includes everything. You decide what you listen to. It's quick and easy to customize your feeds at feeds.freetalklive.com. That's feeds.freetalklive.com.
You're listening to the live edition of Free Talk Live. Hour number 2 is next after the news here on the Liberty Radio Network at LRN.FM.
From Feature Story News in Washington, I'm Simon Marks with the Week in Review, and the week ended with efforts underway to try and save the COP26 climate summit in Glasgow after activists outside the conference and Prime Minister Boris Johnson inside it spent the week warning it was not accomplishing enough. The Prime Minister returned to Scotland in the middle of the week to urge nations to be bolder than the original draft agreement envisaged.
We have to bridge the gap between where we are and where we need to be if we're going to cut emissions in half by 2030. And we need to pull out all the stops if we're going to do what we came here to do.
And outside the conference, activists were activated, among them Gary Jack.
And normally the document that comes out after the first week is fairly hard line, and then in agreements with the countries is watered down to a point that it can be agreed. But if that's the starting point where it is just now, I have very little hope.
Monday may see the European Union unveil fresh sanctions against Belarus after another week of confrontation at the country's border with Poland. Belarusian President Alexander Lukashenko continues to deny he's orchestrating a migrant crisis, despite copious evidence that he is trying to facilitate the migration of people from the Middle East into the EU via Belarusian territory. Franek Vyachorka is an advisor to Belarusian opposition leader Svetlana Tikhanovskaya.
They bought the tour packages, and right now they are waiting to be delivered to the border. They are also hostages. They are also victims of Lukashenko's regime because they believed he can really deliver them to Germany, but it didn't happen. They just became the weapon against the EU.
President Biden is spending the weekend at Camp David ahead of Monday's virtual summit meeting with Chinese President Xi Jinping. Last week, the US and China cooperated with each other over climate change, but were once again at loggerheads over Taiwan. White House Press Secretary Jen Psaki was asked how forceful the president will be over US claims that China is committing genocide against Uyghur Muslims in Xinjiang.
I would say that one of the purposes of this leader-to-leader engagement is to also discuss areas where you have strong concern and disagreement. So this is an area where the president has been vocal. He has taken action. Again, in terms of topics that will be discussed, there will be areas where we work together, and he will not hold back, as he never has, on areas where we have concern.
And we will have full coverage of that summit meeting here on Monday and Tuesday. F.W. de Klerk, the last apartheid-era president of South Africa, died at the age of 85. He shared the Nobel Peace Prize with Nelson Mandela, his successor, and spent much of his political retirement pushing back at claims that his realization of apartheid's evils came relatively late in his political career. From bureaus worldwide, this is FSN. Investors on Wall Street this week will be focusing on the health of the US consumer, and some of the major US big box retailers are slated to release quarterly earnings. With the preview from FSN's business desk in New York, Will Denzelo.
Consumer spending accounts for around 2/3 of US economic output, making Tuesday's retail sales figures a closely watched piece of data for Wall Street to digest. September's numbers were surprisingly upbeat, with some analysts pointing to back-to-school spending and more adults returning to offices. But supply chain issues and inflation concerns persist, which could impact October's retail sales. William Denzelo, New York.
The biggest shopping event in the world broke another record this week. China's e-commerce giant Alibaba says its Singles Day sales reached almost $85 billion on Thursday. FSN's Richard Kimber covered that story from our Hong Kong bureau.
Singles Day is a huge marketing stunt in China based around the ones that make up the 11th day of the 11th month of the year. Chinese e-commerce giant Alibaba launched it as a gimmick in 2009. Since then, it's become a retail revelation, involving tens of thousands of brands from around the world offering steep discounts and dwarfing the US Black Friday and Cyber Monday sales. Analysts say this year's record will ease investor concerns over Alibaba's future. The sales surge is also a boost for the Chinese economy, which is growing at the slowest pace in a year amid rising inflation, energy woes, and a deepening property sector debt crisis. Richard Kimber in Hong Kong.
Stories will report in the week ahead. President Biden signs his infrastructure bill into law on Monday and then holds his virtual summit with President Xi. Secretary of State Antony Blinken will visit Kenya, Nigeria and Senegal. And there's going to be a partial lunar eclipse on Friday, the longest one for 600 years. Those stories here and on Twitter at Feature Story. And that is the Week in Review from Feature Story News. Simon Marks reporting.
Several weeks after the car accident that resulted in the death of his longtime friend Matthew Abrams, local man Keith Bisbee told Onion reporters today that he isn't sure how much longer he should continue using the photo of his deceased friend as his profile picture on Facebook.
People can't really expect me to keep this up forever, right?
Bisbee told reporters he felt like he had done more than his part to preserve the young man's memory. Bisbee added, however, that he had no idea when to go about changing his profile picture.
I'm pretty sure nobody would judge me if I went ahead and changed the photo right now. Matt wouldn't expect me to still have a picture of him up. I mean, I wouldn't expect that of him. You know, I should just do it. Maybe I can go online later tonight when nobody's on. But his girlfriend gets home late from work. I don't really want to seem disrespectful. Maybe I could do it tomorrow morning, or?
At this time, Bisbee has reluctantly changed his profile picture to an image of a gay rights equal sign and is, quote, just waiting to see what happens next.
This is the Onion News Network.
Free Talk Live. It's Free Talk Live. Open phones if you want to join us here. The number is 603-283-6160. And it is the live Saturday edition of the show. We're talking about a town in, I guess it's technically a city. There's only around 15,000 people that live in.
We might be talking about a country.
Oroville. Well, that's what I wanted to find out here, Peakless Mountaineer. I wanted to find out what was the actual language of the town council, or the town, I keep saying town, it's as small as a town, but it's called a city. Oroville City in Northern California. It looks like it's maybe a couple hours north of the capital, Sacramento. And they passed a resolution. It's getting headlines. And you shared a story tonight, and I had another one here from the East Bay Times about what does it mean that Oroville has now passed a resolution saying, and 6-1, by the way, so in an overwhelming vote of the city council, to declare itself a constitutional republic. What does that actually mean? Are they declaring independence from the state of California? Are they declaring independence from the federal government? Well, rather than relying on the news media to interpret this for us, we will interpret it directly, because I've pulled up the city council agenda and packet of information that they, hand out at all these meetings. And I've got the actual text, and thankfully it's not much more than a page long.
Fantastic.
So fairly brief. We'll get to that coming up here in a moment. But first, let's go to Robert. He's on the line in South Carolina listening to WTMA in Charleston. Go ahead, Robert.
Yes, I just wanted to say that you were talking about cars and if they fail and when they'd fail. Well, actually, that's what they call a failure rate. And in Germany, they do a lot of testing to figure out approximately when that failure rate will be, and they know more or less when it is. But the thing is about the failure rate, you can't be exactly sure when it'll fail. It'll fail maybe on average a certain point in a number of trials, but it's not consistent. In other words, it could fail a few or more or a few or less, and it's very, very hard to say exactly when it'll fail. And when an electronic system like that fails, it's dependent upon a lot of things going right. You have programs built upon programs built upon programs. In other words, underlying programs. And everything has to operate more or less right until it reaches a certain point where it causes a problem because you just have too many things going wrong. And
a lot of moving parts.
Yeah, and that's one of the problems. By the way, for listeners just tuning in, you're referring to an earlier topic, which was about the federal government now mandating that there will be DUI checks included in all new cars sometime after 2026. And so that's what you're referring to. And yeah, the more complex a machine is, the more moving parts, the more things
points of failure.
Right, the more things can go wrong. And then you throw software on top of it. Mm-hmm. And now you've got all kinds of other problems, because it's one thing to just have physical, machine pieces of metal moving. That's obviously going to fail at some point, and that's what you're referring to, Robert. But when it's a computer that's controlling certain elements of this machine, now you're entering into the issue of human error when it comes to actually the coding on these computer programs, whether it be automated driving systems that could fail and kill somebody, or just something that's supposed to run the internals of a machine that, they didn't think about the 2001, or not 2001, but the leap year thing. No, not leap year. What was the millennium
the Y2K.
Thing? Y2K. Thank you. Yeah, Y2K. Oh my God, we didn't think about that. So there's all kinds of errors that programmers make. And when it comes to a 2-ton death trap, you want to make sure that there are as few errors as possible. And certainly, increasing complexity of these machines increases the chance for error.
Yes. And I think that there's more danger in the software there is than actually in the hardware, because in the software there are just so many more things that can be problematic, and they're so tiny, and just and almost impossible to make sure that everything goes right all the time for a very, 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 very long time.
Yep, you won't get any disagreement from me on this one, Robert.
Yeah, I'd hate to see a 404 error that ends my life, that's for sure.
Thanks for the call tonight. I appreciate hearing from you. The number again, 603-283-6160. So back to Oroville City Council. Their resolution number 9001 of the City Council declaring the city of Oroville to be a constitutional republic city. So what you get here is basically a page full of whereas, and then they, they lay the groundwork for what they're going to do here. So here we go. Whereas the Constitution of the United States protects our rights. Well, we know that's not true. But they're presuming it's true. Endowed by our Creator, as well as guarantees liberties to American citizens, including the establishment of justice, the promotion of the general welfare, and securing the blessings of liberty. And
by whereas, I mean you're not allowed to pretend this isn't true.
And whereas the Constitution espouses many principles upon which the United States is founded, namely the separation of powers, individual rights, and the rule of law. And whereas the Constitution of the State of California provides that all people are by nature free and independent and have inalienable rights, including enjoying and defending life and liberty, acquiring, possessing, and protecting property, and pursuing and obtaining safety, happiness, and privacy. Boy, all the bad stuff I've heard about California, I never would have presumed any such things were in their Constitution. But it just goes to show that it doesn't really matter what those things say, does it?
What was that Bush quote, a GD piece of paper?
Yeah. Yep. A moment of honesty from a politician.
Rare.
Whereas John Adams, the second president of the United States, wrote, quote, "The very definition of a republic is an empire of laws and not of men. That as a republic is the best of governments, so that particular arrangement of the powers of society, or in other words, that form of government which is best contrived to secure an impartial and exact execution of the laws, is the best of republics." And
that's funny. I thought a republic was supposed to be not an empire.
Yeah. I guess they mystified
either of laws
that.
or of men.
Whereas, as mayor of the city of San Francisco, Gavin Newsom embraced local control and applauded the city of San Francisco's City of Refuge designation by refusing to follow or enforce federal laws regarding certain subjects, which the city believed to be overreaching and oppressive to the residents of City of San Francisco. And whereas, as governor of the state of California, Gavin Newsom has abandoned the very principles he espoused as mayor and a locally elected official in exchange for the unbridled power and unchecked authority over the daily affairs of the citizens of the state of California.
That's true.
And whereas during the coronavirus pandemic, Governor Gavin Newsom has issued a number of executive orders, they say actually a record number of executive orders, despite the fact that the declaration of emergency should have been rescinded many months ago, which, by the way, I just saw another headline that California has now extended again the emergency declaration now.
Wait, you mean they decided to keep the powers that they had?
Yeah, now for more than
Shocking.
2 years, apparently. Whereas at least one court of competent jurisdiction has ruled that the governor has exceeded his authority in issuing the executive orders, and whereas the members of the city council of the city of Oroville believe in the separation of powers, individual rights, and the rule of law as outlined in the U.S. Constitution, including the freedom for local government to have local control over issues related to the citizens who reside within the city's jurisdictional boundaries. Now, therefore, be it hereby resolved by the Oroville City Council that the city of Oroville is declared to be a constitutional republic city. Be it further resolved by the Oroville City Council that any executive orders issued by the state of California or by the United States federal government that are overreaching or clearly violate our constitutionally protected rights will not be enforced by the city of Oroville against its citizens. And again,
wow.
6 out of 7 councilors voted in favor of this declaration.
Of independence, by the sounds of it.
No, not really. All they're saying here...
Not complete independence, but I mean...
All they're saying is they're just...
The subjective language of what is and isn't overreaching is, I mean, they've basically written themselves a blank check for independence.
Not the way I'm reading this, Peakless. They are specifically only going to disobey executive orders that they don't like. So they're not saying if Congress passes something that is unconstitutional, only if the president, only if Gavin Newsom write an executive order that they believe violates constitutional rights, then they will reserve the right to not enforce it. And, to that extent, good for them.
Well, that's downright constitutional.
But it's not secession. It's not declaring independence.
Well,
it's just a baby step. It's
I don't
a baby
know.
step.
I mean, one side says yes, the other says no, because if you've declared yourself a republic, then you are your own nation, your own country.
Well,
now, they might still be obeying these other people, but they are now doing so as an independent country.
That's an interesting argument, and it's, again, better than nothing. So kudos to the city of Oroville for making this move. If you want to weigh in and share your thoughts, 603-283-6160, and maybe others will follow suit with even stronger writings.
Looking for a great real estate investment? Consider New Hampshire, which is ground zero for the Liberty Movement. Your first call should be to Mark Worden from Porcupine Real Estate. He's more than just a real estate agent. He's your New Hampshire concierge. Where are the best places to live? Do you want farm, city, the burbs, or forest? Do you want a duplex or multifamily building so that renters pay your mortgage? There are homes in all price ranges in New Hampshire, and Mark can help with financing too. Invest in liberty and property. Mark Worden can help.
PorcupineRealEstate.com.
Are you tired of governments murdering people around the world? Stop using their money. There is an alternative. Bitcoin is a stateless, free market, non-political currency. Bitcoin cannot be inflated or controlled by any government. By using their money, you are helping the state. Stop doing it. You have an incredible alternative available now. Learn it, use it, spread it.
Get started with Bitcoin at bitcoin.com. That's bitcoin.com.
What if you want to hear the latest episode of Free Talk Live, but all you have is your phone, you forgot to download our archive, and you have no data connection? You can call our Listen line at 641-793-0191. That's a long-distance number, so you may incur charges. If not, listen as long as you want. 641-793-0191. The Free Talk Live Listen line, 641-793-0191.
Do you feel like your nation, state, or community no longer holds your values? Have you dreamt of a place where people agree that liberty is important and are free to pursue their projects so long as they respect the property of others? There are many people just like you that are discovering freeprivatecities.com. Their social media links are at the upper right of the page at freeprivatecities.com. All skill levels will be needed when the first of the Free Private Cities opens. It's sooner than you think. Stop arguing and build. freeprivatecities.com.
The Free State Project has reached its goal of 20,000 liberty lovers who've pledged to move to New Hampshire and get active to achieve liberty in our lifetime. Perhaps you're trying to figure out what part of New Hampshire should be your destination. If so, consider Keene. You'll find more than 150 reasons to move to Keene at move.freekeene.com. Keene is famous for its historic, publicity-generating activism, as well as being the liberty media capital of the world. It's home to freekeene.com, New Hampshire's destination for liberty activism, news, and opinion. For years, we've been compiling over 150 reasons to move to Keene at move.freekeene.com, where you'll learn about some of what's happening here and what makes Keene a great place to live. If you love liberty, you'll probably enjoy anywhere you end up in the Shire. But do your due diligence first. Please visit move.freekeene.com for the full list of over 150 reasons to move to Keene. That's move.freekeene.com. Tired of cancel culture? Sick of mega tech corporations holding an axe over your head? Join the LRN.FM Matrix chat server. It's self-hosted, so no one else can tell us what to do or say. Don't like the existing channels? You can make your own. You can even connect into some of our channels from other Matrix servers. It's federated. For the full LRN.FM Matrix experience, though, you should join our server via the step-by-step instructions at chat.lrn.fm. Chat.lrn.fm. So you've signed the Shire Society Declaration and are planning your move to New Hampshire to be around more liberty-oriented people. Next, sign up for the Shire Society Forum at forum.shiresociety.com. There are a bunch of people there who are already in the Shire, and they want to meet you. If you're already in the Shire physically, you should also come by the forums. Remember, not everyone uses Facebook. New people are signing up for the Shire Society Forum every month, so drop in and say hello at forum.shiresociety.com.
Don't miss a moment of Free Talk Live. Get our archives daily via our podcast at feeds.freetalklive.com.
It's Free Talk Live. We are doing a live Saturday show. The phones are open here. As always, number 603-283-6160. That's 603-283-6160. We've been telling you about the BitBox, which is a 100% open source hardware wallet. That's for cryptocurrency like Bitcoin and Ethereum. And you can get yours over at box.freetalklive.com. Use code FTL to get 5% off. And you can also enter our little giveaway contest we're doing. So here's how you do it. You have to subscribe to our Odyssey channel, and maybe you've already done that. You can do it if you haven't done that over at video.freetalklive.com. Then just take a screenshot of your subscription and tag Aria with the screenshot on our social media server, which you can join over at social.freetalklive.com, and then we'll randomly choose a winner in an upcoming episode of Freer Talk Live. Again, you can check out box.freetalklive.com to learn more about the BitBox. And once again, box.freetalklive.com. Save 5% with code FTL, like Free Talk Live. We go to your calls and thoughts here, talking about the Oroville City Council declaring independence. Well, not so much, but they did declare themselves a constitutional city and refusing to obey what they consider to be unconstitutional.
A constitutional republic.
Yes, Republic City, as they described it. But they say they're going to refuse to obey any unconstitutional executive orders from both the state of California governor and the president of the United States. So it's interesting. It's a step in the right direction at the very least. It's Ian and Peakless Mountaineer here. Let's go to your calls and thoughts, though. Pam is on the line to start things out, listening to KOBE in Las Cruces, New Mexico. Go ahead, Pam.
Hi. I wanted to explain to you how that machine in your car is going to manage to control you and your behaviors while you are driving it.
Okay. Go right ahead. You're referring to the government mandates that all new cars in 2026 will have some form of DUI detection.
Right. Presently, it's a machine that you blow into. You were talking about it earlier. Well, how that controls the person while they are continuing to drive it is they not only have to blow into it in order to get it started, but while you are blowing it, it will beep and insist that you blow in it again to prove it's not taking a step during that time. And it can vary from several minutes up to just a few minutes in between. It's extremely random. And the more frequently it is, in my opinion, the more apt it is to cause you to have an accident because, face it, not everybody, like people with their cell phone, is going to necessarily pull over and park in order to use it. People are going to pick it up and blow into it while they're driving, and this is going to take their attention away from the road and onto the machine. So
that makes sense to me.
Yes, it's going to increase the number of accidents because the best you can possibly do is maybe keep 3/4 of your attention on the road while you are giving the machine some attention, because you can't just randomly, casually do it. You must blow into it in a certain way. You must hold your mouth in a certain way. You must hold your teeth in a certain way. You must make a certain sound. When you blow in it, you have to hum into it.
Really?
The right. Yes. And if it is not happy with what you did, it will shut off and give you a negative score, and then will expect you to do it right again in just a few minutes.
So is the intended, you sound like you've had some personal experience with this, Pam, is the intention that you are supposed to pull over and utilize this, or is it legal, under whatever, mandatory rules they're shoving down your throat for this, that you can continue to drive and operate this thing?
They do expect you to pull over, although I have yet to see very many people using one that actually did pull over. I mean, it's not like you can't do it while you're driving, and who's going to want to pull over when maybe 10 minutes earlier they pulled over to do it then?
Right. That alone is a dangerous move. Like, either way you slice this thing, it's dangerous, because if you're in traffic, changing lanes is always a risky thing. You never know what those other people are doing, and if they're going to speed up and then crash into you or whatever. So the fewer lane changes you can have, the better. And especially if you're on, a high speed area like an interstate or something like that, it's incredibly dangerous to pull over in places like that.
Exactly. I had to borrow someone's car because I was without one. It was a distant relative, but I had to borrow their car to drive on numerous occasions. They had one of these in there for an entire year, and so I had to follow all these rules to be able to drive it. I I had gone and, because I'm handicapped, requested that I receive some sort of override or something because of my handicap in order to drive the car and borrow it, and assured them that I wasn't a good enough friend with this relatives to give that away to them, that I very much wanted them to follow the rules and to learn their lesson, but that I shouldn't have to be punished for something that I wasn't involved in. And yet that was just totally said,
they didn't care.
This person to loan you their car, and you want to borrow it, you have to put up with it.
Well, there's nothing less human than a bureaucracy.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely.
Pam, thanks for sharing your experience with us here tonight. I appreciate the expertise, and thank you for the call. Now, they are saying that the mandate that will be coming into place, according to the federal government's new infrastructure bill in 2026, they're saying they're probably going to rule out the ignition interlock tube where you blow into it as the technology, which of course means that they're going to be granting some sort of new tech company essentially a monopoly over installing these things. How much you want to bet this is going to be, you have to use this corporation to create this technology, not that Toyota will be able to come up with their own or Volvo will come up with their own. It'll be some sort of government approved.
Wonder if it's going to be a no-bid contract.
Yeah. Somebody's buddy is going to get this deal, and it's going to be worth billions of hundreds of billions of dollars.
And, I just can't help but think of the kind of overbearing parent that randomly drug tests their child, for marijuana, even though that child has never shown any interest in doing that in the first place.
Yeah, I don't know what percentage of Americans get arrested for DUI, but I expect that it's probably less than 10%. I think most people are probably responsible people, and they don't drive drunk because they know that it's a really bad plan and they could die or hurt somebody else. But now all Americans will be punished for the actions of that 10% or whoever, 1% or whatever.
And it's just yet another thing of you do not get to determine your own risk. You do not get to say, well, I had one drink an hour ago. No, no, no. You do not get to determine your own level of risk, in the same way that you do not get to determine whether you will be wearing a seatbelt in most places. I mean, that can't possibly harm anyone else, but they're going to make you do it anyway.
Because it's for your own good.
Exactly.
At least so they say. We're going to go to Jerome. He's on the line in South Carolina. Jerome, you're on Free Talk Live.
Yeah. I was just wondering, why is it the judge in that Rittenhouse case, why did it seem like he went off on the prosecuting attorney when he tried to introduce some evidence that's relevant to the case, that being Rittenhouse seeing some people looting the place, and him saying, "Oh, I wish I had my rifle so I could shoot them." So why is that not being introduced into evidence? He shot 3 people. He murdered 2 of them.
All right, well, hang on a second here, Jerome. We're going to come back. I want to give you a chance to express yourself. I think the question in this trial is, was this murder? Some would say it was self-defense, in which case that's not murder. So your thoughts are welcome if you want to join us here. Rittenhouse or independence, DUI, mandatory checks, whatever you want to talk about goes here on Free Talk Live. More coming up.
Carl Watner, longtime proponent of a voluntary society, died last December. You may have seen his articles published on his website, voluntarist.com, in his newsletter, The Voluntarist, the Mises Institute, or elsewhere over the last 40 years. His newest book, I Must Speak Out, Volume 2, The Best of the Voluntarist, is now available via Liberty Under Attack Publications. This 430-page second volume spans the years of 2000 through 2020 and includes articles by Carl Watner, Hans Hermann Hoppe, Carl Hess, Benjamin Tucker, George H. Smith, Lysander Spooner, Pete Eyre, Joyce Brand, and many others. I Must Speak Out is for the newly initiated, the veteran voluntarist, or anywhere in between. Buy the book now at libertyunderattack.com/voluntarist. For more great content on building a voluntary society and for Carl's extensive archives, check out voluntarist.com.
From Feature Story News in Washington, I'm Simon Marks with the Week in Review, and the week ended with efforts underway to try and save the COP26 climate summit in Glasgow after activists outside the conference and Prime Minister Boris Johnson inside it spent the week warning it was not accomplishing enough. The Prime Minister returned to Scotland in the middle of the week to urge nations to be bolder than the original draft agreement envisaged.
We have to bridge the gap between where we are and where we need to be if we're going to cut emissions in half by 2030. And we need to pull out all the stops if we're going to do what we came here to do.
And outside the conference, activists were activated, among them Gary Jack.
And normally the document that comes out after the first week is fairly hard line, and then in the agreements with the countries it is watered down to a point that it can be agreed. But if that's the starting point where it is just now, I have very little hope.
Monday may see the European Union unveil fresh sanctions against Belarus after another week of confrontation at the country's border with Poland. Belarusian President Alexander Lukashenko continues to deny he's orchestrating a migrant crisis, despite copious evidence that he is trying to facilitate the migration of people from the Middle East into the EU via Belarusian territory. Franek Vyachorka is an advisor to Belarusian opposition leader Svetlana Tikhanovskaya.
They bought the tour packages, and right now they are waiting to be delivered to the border. They are also hostages. They are also victims of Lukashenko's regime because they believed he can really deliver them to Germany, but it didn't happen. They just became the weapon against the EU.
President Biden is spending the weekend at Camp David ahead of Monday's virtual summit meeting with Chinese President Xi Jinping. Last week, the US and China cooperated with each other over climate change, but were once again at loggerheads over Taiwan. White House Press Secretary Jen Psaki was asked how forceful the president will be over US claims that China is committing genocide against Uyghur Muslims in Xinjiang.
I would say that one of the purposes of this leader-to-leader engagement is to also discuss areas where you have strong concern and disagreement. So this is an area where the president has been vocal. He has taken action. Again, in terms of topics that will be discussed, there will be areas where we work together, and he will not hold back, as he never has, on areas where we have concern.
And we will have full coverage of that summit meeting here on Monday and Tuesday. F.W. de Klerk, the last apartheid-era president of South Africa, died at the age of 85. He shared the Nobel Peace Prize with Nelson Mandela, his successor, and spent much of his political retirement pushing back at claims that his realization of apartheid's evils came relatively late in his political career. From bureaus worldwide, this is FSN.
We're still not sure why you'd want to watch, but our video feed is streaming nightly for free at cam.freetalklive.com.
It's Free Talk Live. Open phones if you want to join us here. The number is 603-283-6160. That's 603-283-6160. With you in the studio tonight, it's Ian.
And Peakless Mountaineer.
You can bring up whatever you want. We're going to continue with your thoughts. We can talk more about the California city that has declared itself a constitutional republic. Is that a secession move? Because if so, I like that.
So now that I'm looking into it, it seems to be that this was the response to Sanctuary City.
That was the basis on which
if you're declaring your city a sanctuary, well, we're declaring that ours will be part of a constitutional republic, meaning actually follow the document.
Yeah, it's interesting, and we can talk more about that on the way here. But we got Jerome on the line, and he is upset, as Jerome is wont to do, or want to be, about the Kyle Rittenhouse trial that has been going on now for a couple of weeks. And we go back to Jerome on the line here. Jerome, you're back on Free Talk Live.
This isn't self-defense, okay? He wasn't sitting at home and someone broke in and attacked him, and he had to defend himself.
Are you not allowed to defend yourself if someone attacks you on the streets?
Hey, are you allowed to carry a weapon that you're not supposed to have and shoot people with?
Who says he's not supposed to have it?
It's illegal.
No, it's not.
That's what Yes, it is.
Actually, it wasn't.
He was underage.
The weapon that he had at the time was legal under the laws of the state that he was in. Now, that being said, he has a right to self-defense, and he has a right to the implements of self-defense.
He had no business being out there.
His family lives there.
It's his business to
What's
be
that
anywhere he
got to
damn
do
well
with it?
pleases,
He
Jerome.
he can be anywhere he wants.
Was he protecting his own property?
What does it matter?
Was somebody
It's called
attacking his
third-party
property?
self-defense, and it's a right.
Yeah, if I want to defend somebody else's property, if I've got their permission to be on it, then there's nothing wrong with that.
Yeah, whose permission did he have?
The
Tell
owner
me.
of the property.
Yeah, he
Yeah,
had the
you
specific
sure of that?
request of the car dealership that he
Are you
was.
sure of that? You sure someone gave him permission, huh?
Well, ultimately, he didn't get attacked at the car dealership.
Answer
He was
my
in the
question.
streets.
Are
Doesn't
you
matter.
sure someone gave him permission to protect their property?
I was not there, Jerome, so you aren't
Okay,
sure
then.
either, are you?
That means
It's
no.
completely
No, you're
irrelevant.
not
He
sure.
has a right to move. Movement
No,
is
that
a
means-
right.
No, you never. No, you don't. You don't know.
You don't
about
have a
that.
right to leave your
That's
house.
another
Is that
Are you
what you
lie.
saying,
believe?
Jerome, are you saying that only the protesters who were in the streets who weren't right-wingers had a right to be there?
Hey, let me ask you. How
No,
did he get that rifle?
you answer my question first.
Answer my question. How did he get the rifle?
I don't know, Jerome. Now, are you going to answer my
How do
question?
you mean you don't know?
How the hell would
And
I
you're
know?
asking me questions. I know how he got it. He got it from a friend of his.
So
No.
what?
I
he
don't
was
know, and
supposed
more
to have
importantly, I don't care.
Okay, are you going to answer my
did the
question?
same- Hey, you know what? He did the same damn thing Dylan Roof did here in Charleston. And
What?
where's his ass at?
Dylan
That's right.
Roof?
He-
You're
he
talking about the guy
intended-
that slaughtered innocent people in a church?
Yeah.
You're saying, hold
intended a
on.
weapon-
You're actually saying that Kyle Rittenhouse, who clearly, from the video evidence and also now from testimony in the trial from the one guy that got shot and lived, or shot at or whatever, I don't know all the details, but he said that he was raising his gun and coming at Kyle
Sprinting
Rittenhouse.
toward while raising his gun.
And then Rittenhouse shot him after that point. So that's clearly...
And the witness that I had seen there said, well, it's like, well, how did you know his intent? Because he reached for his gun and said, F you.
That's all you need to know. And Jerome, you're saying that is tantamount, that is equivalent to a man going into a church and blasting innocent people? Unarmed innocent people? You're out of your mind.
Hey, he didn't have a damn scratch on him. How the hell you can be attacked and nothing happened to you? But you
I
shoot
watched
three
him
people?
get attacked. I've seen the footage. Have you not?
Have you?
Yeah.
I saw him shooting three people. No. How did he get that weapon? What? He wasn't even supposed to
I
have
don't
that
care
damn
if he
thing.
manifested it out of thin air. That's not
Well,
the
then you're a
point.
fool, then, because you believe in somebody.
I
breaking
don't
the
care if
damn
he
law.
hammered it together in a cave. I don't care if he
you need to
stole it
shut
from
up
you
anyway,
in
'cause
order
you-
to save himself. Honestly.
I had to put him on hold because he just keeps on shouting. Jerome, it would be nice to be able to actually have a conversation with you. I mean, but the thing is, a conversation goes two ways. And I asked you a question earlier. You asked me a question. I went ahead and answered your question, even though I asked you my question first. And now I'm going to ask you to answer my question. Okay? Is that all right with you? Can I ask you this question?
Go ahead.
Okay. The question
ahead.
is, did Kyle Rittenhouse have an equal right to be on the streets just like the other people that were on the streets that night?
Yeah, and not shoot people. Why did he end up shooting three people?
Should he
wasn't
just
even
let
supposed to
himself be
out there.
attacked? Should he just let himself be beaten up by people or possibly shot by them or stabbed by them?
If he wasn't out there, that would have never happened. No.
So
he knew
because
the
he was
damn
out there means he should just let people attack
You
him?
just said he had a right to be there.
No, he was out there looking for trouble because you had
Do
a
you
damn
believe in
illegal
a right
rifle
to
he
self-defense?
wasn't supposed to have.
Jerome?
Yeah, but not when you're carrying an illegal weapon. No.
Oh, so he could have
Who the
defended
hell-
himself if he were carrying a weapon that you believe was legal. Then you would have been fine with
Hey,
it?
who the hell made him the police? Huh? Who asked
Police
him to be
don't
out there?
have any special rights, Jerome. They have the same rights you do, the same rights I do.
The fact is, the police weren't there to help anyone in that circumstance. I don't know where they were, But if they were there, they sure didn't get involved until after the fact. So I'm going to presume they weren't there, although there certainly have been instances of the police just standing by as people are being attacked at various different protest events and doing absolutely nothing to break up the sides. But that said, didn't see any cops in those videos, so I'm just going to presume that they weren't there observing that. So when the police aren't around, and even when they are around, you can't count on them to do anything at all to actually help people. You can't count on them. And you know what, Jerome, you should know that the police are not trustworthy, that the police are dishonest, and that the police are unnecessarily violent towards people. So why are you asking for their help?
Hey, so are people like Kyle Rittenhouse who lie all over themselves on the witness stand. Oh, yeah, they took a risk. Yeah, he sure did. I'm glad he got on it, because now you see what a liar he is.
What are you saying he lied about?
No. How the hell did he get that damn weapon, huh?
Oh, my God. What does it matter how he got the weapon? Did he use it in self-defense or not?
You know, what does it matter? What does it matter? 2 people are dead and 1 got shot. Who's lucky he's alive?
One of them's a child rapist, and the other one was a domestic abuser.
And he's a murderer. No.
Not if it was self-defense.
Yeah.
Which the one that we have witnesses of, that we have, like, including the person who believes that he was assaulted, the witnesses that we have specifically state that he raised his gun and sprinted at him before getting shot.
Yeah, does that matter to you, Jerome?
The witness is a right-wing liar.
The witness is a left-wing Antifa.
The witness is,
Jerome.
Hey, Kyle Rittenhouse is a murderer. I hope he gets convicted. I hope because, hey, him rotting in prison is a lot better than the people he put in the damn grave.
I just want to check on something, Jerome.
I hope his ass gets convicted.
Just want to check something. You know he didn't shoot black people, right?
No, you mean you're lucky he didn't.
I just want to make sure you knew that, because a lot of people on the left who are upset about this trial, they don't know. They think that Kyle Rittenhouse shot and killed black people in Wisconsin, and he didn't. And now I heard that there was one black guy that was, I guess, involved in the attack, but he survived it. Although I'm not 100%
as far as I've heard, the only 3 people that were harmed in this instance were three Caucasian males.
Yeah. Jerome, thanks for the call tonight. I appreciate it.
Well,
although
it's
worth
productive. Pointing out yet again, you do not get your rights from police.
No, they take your rights from you.
That's not where rights come from. Whatever rights police in fact have, they have because they are equals to us.
Yeah, well, that's a nice theory. Unfortunately, the reality is, it seems like the badge does grant them extra
rights and powers are different things.
The number here is 603-283-6160. That's 603-283-6160. Look, anybody that's got experience with the police this day and age knows you can't trust them. They're not going to necessarily help you. They might even kill you in a situation where they don't know whether you're the aggressor or you're defending yourself, and they just come on to a violent scene. Good luck.
This is Michael Dean from the Freedom Fiends. I've run websites since 1996 and have used over a dozen web hosts in that time. AgristHosting.com is the only one that hasn't broken my heart. Agrist Hosting's uptime and service is stellar, and their DDoS mitigation is the best I've seen. That's important because if you tell the truth in this world, you'll ruffle feathers. And some people will try dirty tricks to silence your voice. No matter what the haters hit us with, Agrist Hosting keeps our websites online. If you have a mission-critical commercial presence or a world-changing activism site, you cannot tolerate any skullduggery. So go with AgristHosting.com. Have a WordPress or blog site, but you're not satisfied with performance or uptime? Or just want raw hosting? Want to pay with Bitcoin? Agrist Hosting specializes in high-performance hosting with personalized service. Go to AgristHosting.com and click on the button that says Get Hosted. That's AgristHosting.com.
The new 4th edition of Healing Our World, The Compassion of Libertarianism, will take your understanding of liberty to a deeper level and has over 1,300 updated references, new cartoons, and a foreword by Dr. Ron Paul. With discounts for multiple book purchases, the 4th edition of Healing Our World is a great gift for the liberals, pragmatists, environmentalists, and Christians in your life who think libertarianism is cold-hearted. Get yours today at healing.freetalklive.com and use promo code FTL for a $5 discount. If you want to know the latest about Free Talk Live before we go on the air, all you need to decide is how you want it delivered. It's your choice. Visit news.freetalklive.com to receive our usually weekly news updates by email. Plus, we have a Twitter account at twitter.freetalklive.com, and you can follow us on the decentralized Mastodon platform at toot.freetalklive.com. So please follow us at toot.freetalklive.com and sign up for our emails at news.freetalklive.com.
We have some good news. The indictments against Ross Ulbricht in the District of Maryland were dismissed with prejudice, meaning they can never be refiled. This is especially good because those indictments contain the only charge ever made that Ross engaged in murder for hire. This was a serious allegation that Ross Ulbricht denies. It was never prosecuted or ruled on by a jury, but was trumpeted by the federal government and the media as if it were proven fact. The Maryland court held these indictments for almost 5 years, poisoning Ross's case and leaving him under a cloud of unproven allegations. As explained in Ross's appeal to the Supreme Court, the fact that the judge used these allegations to give Ross a draconian sentence of double life without parole violated his Sixth Amendment right to a jury trial. Judges are required to issue sentences based on convictions decided by a jury, not unproven allegations never even charged at trial. Although this is a positive development, the dropped indictment will not set Ross free. Now, a presidential pardon is Ross's only hope of freedom. Sign the petition at freeross.org. freeross.org.
There are lots of ways to listen to Free Talk Live. Our podcast has been around since podcasts began, and now the FTL feed is loaded with content besides our full show archives. Did you know that we make it easy for you to customize your podcast subscriptions? We have different feeds, one that includes only our full shows, one with just the Daily Digest, and our main feed that includes everything. You decide what you listen to. It's quick and easy to customize your feeds at feeds.freetalklive.com. That's feeds.freetalklive.com.
My name is Jacob Hornberger. I'm president of the Future of Freedom Foundation, which Congressman Ron Paul awarded for having an outstanding freedom website. Write us at fff@fff.org, and we'll send you a free 3-month subscription to our monthly journal of libertarian essays and our booklet, Economic Liberty in the Constitution, which George Mason University economics professor Walter Williams praised in a recent column. That's fff@fff.org.
You can help spread the ideas of liberty with our Patreon for just $5 per month at amps.freetalklive.com.
Talk Live, open phones, live Saturday show. If you want to join us here, you can, whether you want to talk about Kyle Rittenhouse or various different electronic surveillance methods that the federal government's going to be shoving down your throat in the next several years. You can bring up whatever is on your mind here. With you tonight, it's Ian.
And Peakless Mountaineer.
And the number is 603-283-6160. That's 603-283-6160. Also, the California city of Oroville voting at their city council meeting 6-1 to declare themselves a constitutional republic city. Now, we actually read the resolution. We're not just relying on what the media says here. I pulled up the actual resolution. I've actually linked to it on our social media site. So if you are on social.freetalklive.com, you're following the Free Talk Live profile, which you do by default, then you can find the link to that if you want to see it for yourself, to see the exact language, which we read on the air. And it's not as... it's not as hardcore as I would like. It's not an actual declaration of independence from the United States. But it does say if the federal government, if the president, or if even the California governor issues an executive order that they consider to be unconstitutional, they reserve the right to completely ignore it. And so kudos to them for that. It is, I would say, a step in the right direction.
It'd be nice if we had done this the whole time.
Yeah. Well... and what it requires in order to do something like that is a group of people willing to actually do it, willing to actually stand up against these mandates and say, nope, not going to participate. Because if enough people just say no and refuse to go along with this stuff, refuse to enforce it, refuse to obey, there's nothing they can do about it. They don't have enough prisons for us all.
Well, and this sidesteps the usual problem with that of, I don't want to be the only one doing that. Well, here's your opportunity. Now your entire city can sidestep that completely unconstitutional and authoritarian mandate with you.
I'm looking here at a story from the East Bay Times, and it's a question about what does it actually mean. They're looking at this new declaration or this resolution by the city of Oroville, and in doing some interviews and asking some questions about how's this actually going to play out. What does this actually mean? And they spoke with, let's see here, Mr. Pittman, Dave Pittman. He's one of the city councilors who is frustrated by all the rules coming from the state of California and the federal government.
Can't blame him.
And he says, we didn't get that detailed in the resolution about changing structure. We didn't assign any new powers to any position. The executive branch is the staff that carries out the city council and the legislative body's mandates and wishes, he said. They pointed out the city isn't breaking any laws, but also that a mandate is not a law. Quote, a mandate is an agreement between two people. If you want me to do something and I agree to it, we have a mandate. Some people don't agree with the mandates, he said. In practicality, Reynolds, another city councilor, stated the resolution doesn't change anything. He said it's simply reminding people what kind of government we live under and that they do have personal choices and freedoms, he said. Another counselor said while she respected the thought process that went into formulating the resolution, she opposed. She was the one vote to oppose it because it, quote, doesn't have implications in the lives of citizens and that proper procedure in fighting what council believes are unconstitutional mandates is through the judicial system. And I completely disagree.
As do I.
Because this is what we are seeing happen with the state governors who are making a big to-do about we're joining together with the other states, the other red states, and we're challenging Joe Biden's mandates in court, and we'll see you in court, Joe.
Well, and the entire structure of the judicial system is completely backwards. So she's saying that the judicial system should do this. Okay, well, if your court finds that this is unconstitutional, then they're just going to appeal it to a so-called higher court. Then guess what? Eventually, it goes right back to the federal government, and wouldn't you know it, they have a real big tendency of saying, basically, he can do whatever he wants to.
Yes, and so this whole thing about, we're going to fight this in court, it's just a big smokescreen. It's just a way to make it look like they're doing something, when the reality is, as you point out, federal courts are likely to side with the federal government. So now, so far, the court system is acting like that they're going to rule in favor of the states. I don't know if you've heard about the mandate being challenged, the vaccine mandate for the companies with over 100 employees. There was a challenge to that in court. The initial,
it's been at least stayed for the time being.
Yeah, it's been stayed, and of course, there's all this to-do being made about. Well, it's I don't know if I would call it progress. It's a judicial preliminary decision. The case hasn't really even been heard yet. So we'll see what happens when all that plays out. But as you say, it's likely they're going to rule in favor of the federal government and the power and the strength and the invasion of the federal government into people's lives. And these attorneys general and these governors in these states, they must be aware of that. And so they're just biding their time. They're trying to make it look like they're doing something when they're really just relying on the federal government to make a choice.
Well, and it's worth pointing out that while we seem to have a tradition in this country of the Supreme Court determining what is and is not constitutional, there is nothing in that document giving them that ability. I mean, we do that by tradition in the same way that, yes, absolutely. In the same way that by tradition, until Roosevelt, no one took more than 2 terms as president. That was a tradition, but that wasn't actually in the document until they made an amendment that said that you can't have more than 2 terms as president. It just seemed dishonorable because even the great George Washington didn't do that.
Right.
In the same way, while we have a tradition of the Supreme Court deciding what is and is not constitutional, there's nothing giving them that power. What you are supposed to be doing as a state is following the agreement. And if they give you an order that is against the agreement, you are supposed to not follow it.
Yeah, that's the strongest position. And that is the position that would actually enable more, respecting of individual rights. That's, presuming that the people in the state government actually give a damn about that, and we know they don't. And we know that most of them are complete tools of the federal government. They owe their relationships and the money that they make to the federal government. They get money, handed down to them from the federal system, and there's all kinds of strings that are attached to it. We just saw Sununu, who's the governor here in New Hampshire, belly aching because the executive council at first rejected $27 million from the federal government, and apparently a few days ago in a secret meeting decided to accept $22 million.
Oh, I hadn't heard that.
From the Fed. Yes, they reversed their position on that question.
Wow, this is the third time they've had... Wow, so the first 2 times that they had the hearing on this, they said no. And now we had a secret hearing where they said yes.
Yeah.
So we will just keep voting on this until you give me the answer that I want.
Yeah, and they had apparently the hearing was...
Thank you, His Excellency.
They had a public meeting, but they didn't announce this was going to be on the agenda. So it was effectively a secret vote because no one was given notice that was going to happen. So the hundreds of people who had turned out to the previous 2 meetings where they made the right choice, the hundreds of people weren't alerted to it, so they didn't show up, and the federal government's deed was done in this particular case. So these people are owned lock, stock, and barrel by the federal government. They have their allegiance to the federal government. They want power in the federal government. That's what this governor of New Hampshire wants. He wanted to run for U.S. Senate. The only reason he didn't run ultimately, or he's decided not to now apparently.
So we have a state government operating from the shadows.
Yeah. Yeah. And so you're absolutely right. The way to oppose mandates like this is at the local level. If the state government won't do it, then the towns and the cities need to refuse to do it. But again, most of them are getting money from the feds too. So they don't want to rock the boat. They don't want to upturn.
They're in on the take.
Yeah. They don't want to, have the spigot get cut off. So they're not interested in that. So kudos to Oroville for being basically 1 in a billion. I mean, I don't know how many damn towns there are in the United States, but there's probably hundreds of thousands of the things, and these guys are outstanding for actually standing up and saying, no, we're just going to do this ourselves. We're going to make the determination. We're going to say whether or not something is unconstitutional, and we're not going to do anything with it if it is. So.
And the fact is, we have backslid so far that nearly every single order that we're getting is an unlawful order.
Sure.
I mean, pretty much everything these days that the federal government comes out with is in direct contradiction to the limitations of the Constitution. So, I mean, I'm glad we're finally saying, oh, right, we had an agreement not to do all this nonsense.
So what needs to happen, of course, are people that think like this, people that do believe in independence, people that do believe in individual rights, need to come together to the same place, to the same geographic area, and as much as I like what Oroville did, I don't think California is the right place for that.
Well, and I may believe in no government, but I am happy to make friends with people that believe in a constitutional government, and we'll cross that road when we get there. It'll be a while before we get there.
No doubt about it. So if you love liberty, you ought to get on up to New Hampshire. If you're a conservative, you probably belong in Texas. And if you are a liberal, head on out to California, although it doesn't sound like you'll like Oroville very much. There's more coming up here. Hour 3's next. You can take control of the airwaves on Free Talk Live.
Is oral health important to you? If you don't like your own teeth, fresh breath, or kissing people, then by all means stop listening. Several years ago, I met Jessica Armand, founder and CEO of My Magic Mud, and I became passionate about the product that she created and never want to live without it. It's clinically proven to whiten teeth, but I find it does much more. They want you to love My Magic Mud as much as I do, so they're giving you a money-back guarantee plus 20% off. Go to mymagicmud.com and use coupon code FTL20 at checkout. mymagicmud.com, FTL20.
After a devastating war, the alien visitors were driven back, and their willing human collaborators were left behind to face the music. When Emma Jean Anderson's ex-lover springs her from prison, Nathan Foster and his 14-year-old nephew Ben are tasked with bringing the pair to justice. An easy enough job until they discover something is inside Emma Jean, and the fate of the planet hangs in the balance. The Family Business by Mike Coopery from BaneBooks.com.
There are basically 2 types of advertising: direct response and branding. Radio's great for direct response with its low cost to listener ratio, but audio can't be beat for branding, which is a longer-term endeavor. You want to be the first thing that someone thinks of when they think about your product or service. If you have a local business that you want kept top of mind in your community, call the station. If you need national reach, Free Talk Live's got around 200 radio stations, millions of monthly listening sessions, can suit all budgets, and if we don't think we're right for you, we'll tell you. Email me, mark@freetalklive.com.
What if you want to hear the latest episode of Free Talk Live, but all you have is your phone? You forgot to download our archive, and you have no data connection. You can call our Listen line at 641-793-0191. That's a long-distance number, so you may incur charges. If not, listen as long as you want. 641-793-0191. The Free Talk Live Listen line, 641-793-0191.
You're listening to the live edition of Free Talk Live. Hour number 3 is next after the news here on the Liberty Radio Network at LRN.FM.
From Feature Story News in Washington, I'm Simon Marks with the Week in Review, and the week ended with efforts underway to try and save the COP26 climate summit in Glasgow after activists outside the conference and Prime Minister Boris Johnson inside it spent the week warning it was not accomplishing enough. The Prime Minister returned to Scotland in the middle of the week to urge nations to be bolder than the original draft agreement envisaged.
We have to bridge the gap between where we are and where we need to be if we're going to cut emissions in half by 2030. And we need to pull out all the stops if we're going to do what we came here to do.
And outside the conference, activists were activated, among them Gary Jack.
And normally the document that comes out after the first week is fairly hard line, and then in the agreements with the countries it is watered down to a point that it can be agreed. But if that's the starting point where it is just now, I have very little hope.
Monday may see the European Union unveil fresh sanctions against Belarus after another week of confrontation at the country's border with Poland. Belarusian President Alexander Lukashenko continues to deny he's orchestrating a migrant crisis, despite copious evidence that he is trying to facilitate the migration of people from the Middle East into the EU via Belarusian territory. Franek Vyachorka is an advisor to Belarusian opposition leader Svetlana Tikhanovskaya.
They bought the tour packages, and right now they are waiting to be delivered to the border. They are also hostages. They are also victims of Lukashenko's regime because they believed he can really deliver them to Germany, but it didn't happen. They just became the weapon against the EU.
President Biden is spending the weekend at Camp David ahead of Monday's virtual summit meeting with Chinese President Xi Jinping. Last week, the US and China cooperated with each other over climate change, but were once again at loggerheads over Taiwan. White House Press Secretary Jen Psaki was asked how forceful the president will be over US claims that China is committing genocide against Uyghur Muslims in Xinjiang.
I would say that one of the purposes of this leader-to-leader engagement is to also discuss areas where you have strong concern and disagreement. So this is an area where the president has been vocal. He has taken action. Again, in terms of topics that will be discussed, there will be areas where we work together, and he will not hold back, as he never has, on areas where we have concern.
And we will have full coverage of that summit meeting here on Monday and Tuesday. F.W. de Klerk, the last apartheid-era president of South Africa, died at the age of 85. He shared the Nobel Peace Prize with Nelson Mandela, his successor, and spent much of his political retirement pushing back at claims that his realization of apartheid's evils came relatively late in his political career. From bureaus worldwide, this is FSN. Investors on Wall Street this week will be focusing on the health of the US consumer, and some of the major US big box retailers are slated to release quarterly earnings. With the preview from FSN's business desk in New York, Will Denzelo.
Consumer spending accounts for around 2/3 of US economic output, making Tuesday's retail sales figures a closely watched piece of data for Wall Street to digest. September's numbers were surprisingly upbeat, with some analysts pointing to back-to-school spending and more adults returning to offices. But supply chain issues and inflation concerns persist, which could impact October's retail sales. William Denzelo, New York.
The biggest shopping event in the world broke another record this week. China's e-commerce giant Alibaba says its Singles Day sales reached almost $85 billion on Thursday. FSN's Richard Kimber covered that story from our Hong Kong bureau.
Singles Day is a huge marketing stunt in China based around the ones that make up the 11th day of the 11th month of the year. Chinese e-commerce giant Alibaba launched it as a gimmick in 2009. Since then, it's become a retail revelation, involving tens of thousands of brands from around the world offering steep discounts and dwarfing the US Black Friday and Cyber Monday sales. Analysts say this year's record will ease investor concerns over Alibaba's future. The sales surge is also a boost for the Chinese economy, which is growing at the slowest pace in a year amid rising inflation, energy woes, and a deepening property sector debt crisis. Richard Kimber in Hong Kong.
Stories will report in the week ahead. President Biden signs his infrastructure bill into law on Monday and then holds his virtual summit with President Xi. Secretary of State Antony Blinken will visit Kenya, Nigeria and Senegal. And there's going to be a partial lunar eclipse on Friday, the longest one for 600 years. Those stories here and on Twitter at Feature Story. And that is the Week in Review from Feature Story News. Simon Marks reporting.
In a statement this week, famed actor and television icon Dick Van Dyke confessed to being the Zodiac Killer, responsible for terrorizing Northern California in the late 1960s and early 1970s. The 85-year-old actor, known for his television and film appearances in classics such as Chitty Chitty Bang Bang, Mary Poppins, and The Dick Van Dyke Show, said he committed the Zodiac murders but also killed over 37 additional people. Van Dyke said, quote, "It was unbelievably easy for me to go kill someone, come back to Burbank and get on set. It was actually part of the fun to see if I could book a flight and make it back in time." Van Dyke's confession is corroborated by several eyewitnesses describing the Zodiac Killer as, quote, "a gangly, loose-limbed man with a toothy grin and a spring in his step." In other news, the open dialogue two Americans are having about race is pretty hilarious. A husband is experimenting with an open marriage, and a f***ing loser is at a movie all by himself. This episode of The Onion Week in Review was paid for, funded, and entirely created by The Onion, and in no way benefited from cheap, thankless viewers like you. For more, keep checking theonion.com.
Free Talk Live.
It's Free Talk Live, kicking off the third hour here of the live Saturday edition of the show. The number, if you want to join us, 603-283-6160. That's 603-283-6160. With you tonight, it's Ian.
And Pinkless Mountaineer.
Whether you want to talk about the new DUI check mandates on all new vehicles starting as early as 2026, the California town that has declared independence apparently, or maybe not quite, but we can talk about all those things. Or somebody else brought up, of course, Kyle Rittenhouse on trial. So anything that's on your mind, it goes here at 603-283-6160. Coming up also, Peakless Mountaineer, you've got some, I'm sure, terrible green financial future plan by some, bankers or something like that.
Oh, yeah.
You're going to tell us about. That's on the way, but back to your phone calls and thoughts first. We've got Ghost calling us from Columbia, South Carolina, listener on WQXL there on FM. Go ahead, Ghost.
Hey, I was listening earlier when Jerome called in, and I hear this guy calling like every week or on the weekends.
Yeah.
And it just got me thinking, like, that mindset that people have where they just believe everything the mainstream media tells them.
Yeah, and of course the mainstream media believes everything the government tells them.
Well, I'll just say, yeah, like, I don't think a lot of people realize the CIA infiltrated these mainstream media news organizations.
Well, heck, a bunch of them actually hire CIA people to be their analysts.
Sure, Anderson Cooper.
Yeah.
Anderson Cooper, yeah. And they've been doing that since at least the 50s, and then it was in the 1970s when Operation Mockingbird came to light, which they said they quit doing that. Yeah, right. They're still doing that.
Well, you know, when the CIA says that they've stopped a program, I mean, you trust spies, right?
Yeah, I forgot the guy's name. One of the directors said, I think the quote was, "Our disinformation campaign will be complete once everything the American public believes is false."
That's exactly right.
I think that was one of the CIA directors said that. But yeah, these people are known liars. They're sociopaths.
Oh yeah, there was a CIA director that's like, when I was at West Point, they taught us, not to lie and not to steal and not to cheat, and that's my job now. And yeah, of course they're lying. Why on earth would they not lie to us?
I just don't understand how people can't question that and think for themselves. Like, they just believe it all, like the gospel, like the Bible, man.
They were raised in government schools, right? Like government gang had their clutches into them for at least 13 years in most young people's cases. Some of them went even longer. Yeah, some of them went even longer, and they went into government college where they continued to be indoctrinated. And then they went in and they, go into the normal life where they're consuming media, which of course is run by people who've been indoctrinated. If they aren't themselves CIA, handlers or, controlled or whatever, they at the very least have gone through those years of education.
Yeah,
so
a decade or two of government indoctrination is one thing. And it's also because it's a valid question of like, okay, when you have access to information that absolutely disproves the idea that these people are serving you, why do you not, incorporate that into your worldview? And a big part of it is this. This is the biggest kid on the playground, and they just don't ever want to believe that that's not their friend.
So basically, they're the enemy of the people. And another point is, you look at who owns the mainstream media, these mega corporations. There's only a few of them that own like all of TV, and they're owned by the same people. They're owned by, most of the shares are owned by BlackRock and Vanguard. They own Fox and CNN. That's the whole left-right paradigm, just right there for you. They're using it to divide and conquer and control people's minds.
Oh yeah, BlackRock and Vanguard own, last I checked, almost every piece of information source that anyone goes to. I mean, if you want to get away from CNN, what do? You Google it, right? Well, wouldn't you know it, that BlackRock and Vanguard Group, they also own Google and Apple.
Now, who are these people? Isn't it BlackRock like a Chinese real estate company or what?
No, that's a different one. The Chinese one that's been in financial trouble recently. But no, BlackRock and Vanguard are these holding companies that just own these massive, massive swaths of the largest corporations in the country. Well, on Earth.
Vanguard is the guys who own BlackRock are Vanguard. Most of the shares of BlackRock are from Vanguard. And if you want to know who owns Vanguard, that's these international bankers like the Rothschild family and J.P. Morgans and all these people. They hide all their wealth in these groups like Vanguard Group, and then they funnel all their money around using foundations like the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, the Open Society Foundation, which is George Soros, and what's the other one? Oh, yeah, the Clinton Foundation.
Yeah, and one of the fun tricks that I've seen is where they actually own the shares of their own company, so that it becomes even more difficult and more obscured to find out who's running these things. But
they own all the governments. It's all controlled. It's all scripted. You can see these montages where they have. You might have seen these where they clip together all the different news stations across the country, and they're all saying the exact same thing, like a script, like, this is extremely dangerous to our democracy.
Well, and so here's the thing. So, I mean, yes, these sources of information are absolutely controlled by the same thing. However, that's a smokescreen. So, sure, if I wanted to get off of MSNBC, so I Googled it, or I went on to YouTube, which are in fact the same thing.
Sure.
However, there are these other sources. So like right now, there's a bunch of people who are hearing us through the extraordinary power of really simple syndication, and they just get on their podcatcher and get the podcast. And that is nearly unstoppable as long as the information's still being hosted. And that's not a centralized source of information.
Well, you're right, Peakless. There are bright spots out there on the internet, but you have to seek those, right? Like, we're not on your local cable channels in most markets.
Absolutely
We're not on the big broadcast television networks or whatever. We've done pretty well for a small radio show now on 185 plus radio stations. So we do get to actually bring these ideas to a wide audience. But we're unusual in the world of pro-liberty content out there. There's dozens of libertarian podcasts, but if you're not looking for them, you're never going to find them.
Well, and that's exactly the trick. You have to go seeking information.
Yeah.
And it's out there if you want to get it. I mean, we're also on Library and Odyssey. But again, you got to go looking for it. And I mean, I remember at the late 90s, the early 2000s, when a lot of individuals had their own little website where they could talk about what was on their mind.
Sure.
And then Facebook comes along. Well, I mean, MySpace originally, but these companies come along and they're like, don't bother to make your own website. We'll just give you the website that everyone's making anyway. It's just a really simple format, and you just put your data in, and we'll make it for you, which seemed good at the time.
Until you can't say that.
Right. Because it's not your website, it's theirs.
Ghost, anything else you want to share tonight?
I just want to say I just hope people would actually question these people and don't believe all the scamdemic nonsense out there. And I really enjoy the show.
Thanks, Ghost. Appreciate hearing from you. Great points tonight, man.
Well, and I really hope that the people who are seeing through it now don't go back to sleep when things shift around.
Oh, yeah, when the Republicans get elected or whatever, right?
I mean, all of these news sources that were lying us into war, the left was very awake to that.
Mm-hmm.
They were very well aware that we were being lied into a disastrous and murderous war that we are still in. They knew that then, and they've gone back to sleep and started trusting ABC, NBC, MSNBC, CNN.
Right. And trusting Pfizer and a lot of these drug companies that many of them were skeptical of just as recently as the year 2020 when Trump was in charge.
Yeah, I mean, did we forget to be against corporations on the left?
Apparently
Is that what happened?
did, yeah. They've completely forgotten that.
So I really hope that people can just stay awake to the things that they're awake to now as things shift.
603-283-6160. You can join us. We got time for you here on the live Saturday edition of Free Talk Live.
Looking for a great real estate investment? Consider New Hampshire, which is ground zero for the Liberty Movement. Your first call should be to Mark Worden from Porcupine Real Estate. He's more than just a real estate agent. He's your New Hampshire concierge. Where are the best places to live? Do you want farm, city, the burbs, or forest? Do you want a duplex or multifamily building so that renters pay your mortgage? There are homes in all price ranges in New Hampshire, and Mark can help with financing too. Invest in liberty and property. Mark Worden can help.
PorcupineRealEstate.com. Are you tired of governments around the world killing innocent people? Stop using their money. There is an alternative. Bitcoin is a stateless, free market, non-political currency. Bitcoin is money that cannot be inflated or controlled by any state. By continuing to use their money, you're perpetuating the killing. Stop doing it. You have an incredible alternative available to you now. Learn it, use it, spread it.
Get started with Bitcoin at Bitcoin.com. It's Bitcoin.com.
Tired of cancel culture? Sick of mega tech corporations holding an axe over your head? Join the LRN.FM Matrix chat server. It's self-hosted, so no one else can tell us what to do or say. Don't like the existing channels? You can make your own. You can even connect into some of our channels from other Matrix servers. It's federated. For the full LRN.FM Matrix experience, though, you should join our server via the step-by-step instructions at chat.lrn.fm. Chat.lrn.fm.
Do you feel like your nation, state, or community no longer holds your values? Have you dreamt of a place where people agree that liberty is important and are free to pursue their projects so long as they respect the property of others? There are many people just like you that are discovering freeprivatecities.com. Their social media links are at the upper right of the page at freeprivatecities.com. All skill levels will be needed when the first of the Free Private Cities opens. It's sooner than you think. Stop arguing and build. freeprivatecities.com.
Join liberty-minded voluntarists, anarchists, and libertarians from June 27th through July 3rd for the 6th annual Fork Fest at Rogers Campground in the beautiful White Mountains of New Hampshire. Fork Fest is a fork of the Porcupine Freedom Festival, which sold out for the first time in 2021. Fork Fest takes place the week after Pork Fest, but Fork Fest is decentralized, which means that there's no ticket cost and no one is in charge. All you have to do to join the fun is reserve your camping site, RV site, or motel room with Rogers Campground for June 27th through July 3rd. There's no better place to celebrate Independence Day than around other freedom-loving activists in the Shire. You can find out more at the unofficial website, forkfest.party. You can also connect with other attendees on the Forkfest Telegram and Matrix chat rooms, as well as the Forkfest Forum. You can find links to those at forkfest.party. We hope to see you there. Forkfest.party.
If you want to know the latest about Free Talk Live before we go on the air, all you need to decide is how you want it delivered. It's your choice. Visit news.freetalklive.com to receive our usually weekly news updates by email. Plus, we have a Twitter account at twitter.freetalklive.com, and you can follow us on the decentralized Mastodon platform at toot.freetalklive.com. So please follow us at toot.freetalklive.com and sign up for our emails at news.freetalklive.com. So you've signed the Shire Society Declaration and are planning your move to New Hampshire to be around more liberty-oriented people. Next, sign up for the Shire Society Forum at forum.shiresociety.com. There are a bunch of people there who are already in the Shire, and they want to meet you. If you're already in the Shire physically, you should also come by the forums. Remember, not everyone uses Facebook. New people are signing up for the Shire Society Forum every month, so drop in and say hello at forum.shiresociety.com.
Yep, we still do email. Drop your email address in the entry box at freetalklive.com, and you'll be kept in the loop with Free Talk Live.
Free Talk Live, open phones, live Saturday show. You can bring up what you want. The number 603-283-6160, 603-283-6160. Here tonight in the studio, it's Ian.
And Peakless Mountaineer.
We're brought to you by Bitcoin.com. You ready to start learning about cryptocurrency like Bitcoin and Bitcoin Cash? You can click Get Started at the top of the page over at Bitcoin.com. There's an introductory video. Actually, there's a series of them. But if you just watch the first one, I think it's going to take all of 3 minutes of your time, and you will get down some of the basic concepts that you need to understand about why Bitcoin is so important, why cryptocurrency is making such an impact, what makes it so different from the government monies and the big banker monies that we've been foisted upon us for our whole lives. What is this all about? Bitcoin.com can help answer those questions, and then you can dig in further if you like. They've got lots more information there. Again, just click Get Started at the top of the page at Bitcoin.com, and they've also got the latest news headlines over at news.bitcoin.com. In fact, we were just talking about alternatives to the mainstream media that is controlled by just a select group of corporations with, similar investors, and the World Economic Forum and the Bilderberg Group and all these people that are the bigwigs out there that want to completely control your life. They want total power over, because they got plenty of money. They want power over you. And so we were talking about that and talking about media alternatives. Like, we're unusual. Free Talk Live is an unusual show because we're on broadcast radio. And so we have the opportunity to just kind of get random tune-ins, basically, which is nice. That's kind of like we're just sort of this beacon out there of the ideas of liberty that sadly is really the only one with any consistency, with any principle on broadcast radio. Years ago, I had hoped that this would catch on and that we would have competitors out there and there would be other liberty-oriented shows.
Wouldn't that be nice?
Who could do it better than we can. But no, they have never come about, and there's really no other show out there, unfortunately, on broadcast radio like this. There are dozens of great liberty-oriented podcasts out there, great little internet shows run by various different people of some renown or not so renowned, but you have to be looking for content like that in order to find it, whereas people can just sort of accidentally discover Free Talk Live. So there's a real value in, I think, what we do here. We can be that kind of initial dose of freedom for people, and then get them wanting to learn more and get them digging in deeper into the lesser discussed issues or more esoteric ends of these things. So.
Well, and something that's really worth mentioning, just about the nature of the human nervous system. So if danger comes at you, you will revert to the simplest part of your nervous system, which is the fight, flight, or freeze mechanism. So if this, if potentially dangerous things are being given to you, and we all know that the corporate media will scare you as much as possible just to get more views.
Sure.
So if this, potentially dangerous information is coming at you, then you will revert to the simplest possible parts of yourself. And if, on the other hand, you are seeking out potentially dangerous information, it activates a completely different part of your nervous system. So that's the part of your nervous system that goes, okay, I can figure out new tools. That's the complex part where you're like, I can make alliances. I can find people who know more than me and find out what they know. I can, set up new tools to deal with these potential situations.
But you have to make a choice to operate in that state.
Exactly. You have to go seeking the dragon in its lair, metaphorically speaking.
Well, and one of the problems, of course, that people run across, we're coming back to the question of why people are so obedient, why people are so clueless about what's really going on out there, and why are they, just doing what they're told and believing everything that the media, spits at them. Because it's convenient, because if you actually do step out of line, if you actually do question the state, if you question the status quo, well, as we saw in the year 2020 most recently, you're going to lose some of your so-called friends. Mm-hmm. There are going to be some people who you thought were your friends who are going to put you on the outs if they discover that all of a sudden turns out you don't share the values that they thought you shared, which is, just believing what you're told and going along to get along. And oh my God, you don't want to wear a mask? In fact, where there was a story that is about the Thanksgiving holiday coming up where some large number of people, let me see if I can pull it up here. It's at the top of Drudge Report right now. 3 out of 5 are banning unjabbed relatives from their holiday gatherings.
Disgusting.
So there are literally people who are turning out their own family members over a question of, are you going to put an experimental drug in your veins? That is what is dividing families, let alone friendships that have been.
And it's just
together.
So much more convenient to get the free jab and the donut or beer that comes with it.
Yeah, well, yeah, and you are anti-American if you don't just do what you're told, right? Don't Americans do what they're told? Isn't that what it means? To be an American is to just obey?
Yeah, suddenly I'm supposed to protect you and the vaccine isn't?
Let's go to your phone calls. David's on the line in New Mexico. You're on Free Talk Live, David.
I'm glad to hear that the country is self-dividing, so we don't have to choose up sides. They're helping us do it.
Yeah, it can't happen soon enough.
Right. Yeah, I agree. And people better think carefully about which side they want to be on, because one side or the other will win. And I find it interesting. It might be helpful to other people. A technique I've been doing to fight our government, to fight our courts, like in the state of New Mexico. The court system here, family and children's, here is something that I have done that, and I'll tell you the interesting result that you can see for yourself and apply the techniques if you want yourself. What I did is I took a statement of fact that is verifiable in the state's own records, and I made a little blurb, and I attach this blurb to everything that I post that's related to this on every different venue, forum that I post to around the internet that people typically post to. And this blurb says, notice, public, legal, warning, danger, assisted by New Mexico Court of Appeals proven child traffickers, Judges John J. Romero Jr., that's John J. Romero Jr., and M. Monica Zamora, that's M. Monica Zamora, Nicole Madaria Elich, and Kurt Odin Elich are committing domestic and child abuse by parental alienation. Do not spend time or money in New Mexico. I've attached that to everything that is related that I posted for many years. And as a consequence of that, if you search my name, David Brent Olson, David Olson 333, or any of the names that I listed, like Judge John J. Romero Jr. or M. Monica Zamora, you will find your landing page there on Google or whatever is filled with what I just read to you. And this is all truthful, so it's not defamation. Mm-hmm. And even better, if somebody wants to accuse me of defamation, I invite it, because guess what happens if you accuse me of defamation?
Going to court.
You've got to take me. Yeah, you got to go to court, and you depose me, and I depose you, and I get even more information than what I've got now. So, anyway, that's a little bit of interesting real life there that I find to be interesting and helpful.
David, thanks for the call tonight. Appreciate it. The number is 603-283-6160. You can bring up what you want. Now, will this schism that's happening, will this lead to a civil war? There's a lot of talk about that out there. There's a lot of people that are voting with their feet. They're moving to a place that's more like them. I think that's a way to avoid civil war, personally.
Indeed.
Let's get into it. On the way here, you can join us, 603-283-6160 on Free Talk Live.
And now, time for something totally different. Intercoin is a project that's working to make crypto mainstream. We use the power of smart contracts to help any community in the world launch their own cryptocurrency. Ever wanted to release your own coin or build your own app to grow your business? Intercoin's team builds apps that have reached 9 million people around the world. And now it's time to help make a real social impact in your local community. Go to intercoin.org and join the movement. That's intercoin.org.
You know, when we first started Intercoin about 3 years ago, we had a big vision to help every community in the world have access to the same tools that large states and federations do, to hold local elections on the blockchain, to have their own local currency, shop local, hire local, and help fight the forces of globalization that have decimated some of these communities.
Go to intercoin.org and join the movement.
From Feature Story News in Washington, I'm Simon Marks with the Week in Review, and the week ended with efforts underway to try and save the COP26 climate summit in Glasgow after activists outside the conference and Prime Minister Boris Johnson inside it spent the week warning it was not accomplishing enough. The Prime Minister returned to Scotland in the middle of the week to urge nations to be bolder than the original draft agreement envisaged.
We have to bridge the gap between where we are and where we need to be if we're going to cut emissions in half by 2030. And we need to pull out all the stops if we're going to do what we came here to do.
And outside the conference, activists were activated, among them Gary Jack.
And normally the document that comes out after the first week is fairly a hard line, and then in agreements with the countries it is watered down to a point that it can be agreed. But if that's the starting point where it is just now, I have very little hope.
Monday may see the European Union unveil fresh sanctions against Belarus after another week of confrontation at the country's border with Poland. Belarusian President Alexander Lukashenko continues to deny he's orchestrating a migrant crisis, despite copious evidence that he is trying to facilitate the migration of people from the Middle East into the EU via Belarusian territory. Franek Vyachorka is an advisor to Belarusian opposition leader Svetlana Tikhanovskaya.
They bought the tour packages, and right now they are waiting to be delivered to the border. They are also hostages. They are also victims of Lukashenko's regime because they believed he can really deliver them to Germany, but it didn't happen. They just became the weapon against the EU.
President Biden is spending the weekend at Camp David ahead of Monday's virtual summit meeting with Chinese President Xi Jinping. Last week, the US and China cooperated with each other over climate change, but were once again at loggerheads over Taiwan. White House Press Secretary Jen Psaki was asked how forceful the president will be over US claims that China is committing genocide against Uyghur Muslims in Xinjiang.
I would say that one of the purposes of this leader-to-leader engagement is to also discuss areas where you have strong concern and disagreement. So this is an area where the president has been vocal. He has taken action. Again, in terms of topics that will be discussed, there will be areas where we work together, and he will not hold back, as he never has, on areas where we have concern.
And we will have full coverage of that summit meeting here on Monday and Tuesday. F.W. de Klerk, the last apartheid-era president of South Africa, died at the age of 85. He shared the Nobel Peace Prize with Nelson Mandela, his successor, and spent much of his political retirement pushing back at claims that his realization of apartheid's evils came relatively late in his political career. From bureaus worldwide, this is FSN.
Got Telegram? You can follow our channel there and discuss show prep with other listeners at telegram.freetalklive.com.
Free Talk Live, open phones here, live Saturday show. The number, if you want to join in, 603-283-6160. That's 603-283-6160. Here tonight, you've got Ian
and Peakless Mountaineer.
We had the news earlier tonight, Peakless, that you shared about a California city, Oroville, in the northern section of California that has not quite declared independence, but has declared itself a constitutional republic city and is reserving the right to ignore and refuse to enforce anything that is an executive order from either the state or the federal government that they think is unconstitutional. So kudos to them for that. And there's just been a large amount of discussion in recent weeks and months, especially about civil war or secession. Now, you don't have to have a war over secession, but a lot of people think you do. Like when you start talking about peaceful secession, a lot of people just don't understand that secession can actually be peaceful, and in many cases has been peaceful. Just not the Civil War in the United States, not that attempt at secession, and certainly not the U.S.'s attempt to secede from the U.K., which is, of course, what formed the United States in the first place. So, in our history, it hasn't been particularly peaceful, but you don't have to go back very far. Brexit is a fine example of something that happened within the last several years that was a completely peaceful secession from the European Union in that particular case. The EU did not invade Great Britain. There were not any shots fired. No one died in the process. It was an ugly political procedure, but it didn't get violent. And so it doesn't have to be like that.
And it's worth pointing out that that's become more and more common as we've come closer to the current era.
Yes, that is true. But nonetheless, whenever you bring up secession, the biggest objections, the most common objections are almost always, well, that was settled with the Civil War, or they'll invade you, is what you most usually hear. It's like people just believe that the U.S. government will drop bombs or roll in tanks on any U.S. state that decides to call it quits on the Union. And so there's an interesting article over at unheard.com entitled, Would America Survive a Civil War? And I'm just going to jump down to the part of the story where they actually look at the question of what would it actually look like? Because we've said here before on the air that they're not going to roll in tanks and they're not going to drop bombs because they're going to kill their own loyalists in that case. And that alone would look really bad, let alone how bad it would look to simply invade a place where people have friends and family members and stuff.
Especially when you're trying to project an image of being a peaceful democracy that, needs to regulate everyone else's country.
Yeah, so let's get into it here. They point out that obviously one of these civil wars would not be your typical military versus military. If the U.S. military got involved, it would be up against counterinsurgency. And in a counterinsurgency warfare, according to Unheard, everything that makes the U.S. armed forces so-called great, like high-tech weapon platforms with immersive or immense destructive power, are not just useless, but counterproductive. A tank parked outside a shopping mall in Idaho will either spend its time shooting at nothing or be at a very high risk of killing innocent American civilians for the high crime of looking suspicious. Droning American weddings, like the Afghan weddings, does very little to advance the goals of a counterinsurgency. If anything, it only makes the relatives of the dead more likely to fight. And we found that out pretty crystal clear in Afghanistan.
Insurgent math.
And 20 years later, the U.S. left. The U.S. armed forces are also at least an order of magnitude too small to do the job effectively. During Operation Banner, the British military deployed at most 20,000 soldiers in Northern Ireland to keep a lid on that wayward province. The U.S. armed forces consist of about 1.3 million active duty personnel. But that's spread out over 5 branches. So you get the Army, Marine Corps, Navy, Air Force, Coast Guard, and only a small minority of military personnel are actually combat troops. It's thus very unlikely that the armed forces could scramble more than 100,000 regulars willing to do the job of holding an M4 and patrolling down the main street of any town, Texas. To put that into perspective, Northern Ireland is about 2% the size of Texas. So remember, the Brits put 20,000 soldiers in Northern Ireland. How many could the U.S. military realistically put in even a place as large as Texas? Then there's the fact that the most significant political split in America is between rural areas and coastal metropolises, and the armed forces are reliant on the very areas it would be tasked with policing as far as recruiting its soldiers. Red America is overrepresented within the armed forces, and this won't change. As such, the U.S. doesn't just have too few soldiers, it has potentially unreliable ones. And the more brutality is used against recalcitrant red states, the more these soldiers will be ordered to fight and kill their own friends and family. A recipe for serious mutiny and disobedience.
I can't help but be reminded of the fact that the candidate that received the greatest amount of donations from military personnel when he was running was Ron Paul.
Ron Paul, by and far.
By a huge margin. Yeah. So, I mean, the idea that they do actually support, I mean, for one, the idea of keep your agreement here. We had this, thing that they told us was why we have a country is that we have this constitution, and yet it is constantly being violated. So certainly the fact that we have rights, including in some ideas, secession, is pretty darn popular among the armed forces.
Yeah, and a lot of them, presuming they're supporting Ron Paul, whose stated goal was to withdraw the U.S. military from the its 700 plus bases or whatever all around the planet and bring them home. It's clear that they like the idea of coming home, right? Mm-hmm. And not so they can occupy as an occupying force in the streets to keep their own people down. So I think it would be very unpopular to actually try to, for the U.S. military to invade another state. But there's more. There's now an elephant in the room, he says. In the case of an American drone pilot accidentally blowing up a wedding in Afghanistan, the Afghan relatives of the slain have very little recourse. If an American drone pilot blows up an American wedding, however, that drone pilot and his or her family live somewhere in the United States. Given the likely unreliability of some significant parts of the armed forces, the name and address of the most hated butchers are unlikely to stay a secret for long. In Northern Ireland, for example, the Provisional IRA not only attacked soldiers, they made a habit of assassinating the officers, commanders, and politicians, both for revenge and as a display of might. From Lord Mountbatten to a near miss against Margaret Thatcher herself to a score of less well-known targets, the IRA illustrates just how difficult it is to protect against an enemy that can simply choose to not wear a uniform before their enemies visit. And now with all that said, how likely is it there will be some sort of civil conflict in the near or mid-future for the U.S.? Unfortunately, the correct answer here may very well be that it's not terribly unlikely. What is significant about America today is not that it's nearing its 250th birthday, but rather the clear and advanced signs of sickness in the body politic. The ranks of America's military are now sullen and battered after 20 years of failed nation building, while its higher officer corps is increasingly alienated from the world of its grunts, mirroring that same cultural, economic, and social divide that is currently poisoning civilian life in the U.S. The legitimacy of its elite has been shaken repeatedly, and faith in the electoral process itself is now rapidly declining among large segments of the electorate.
Ain't that the truth?
America is currently a malarial swamp of strange new faiths, creeds, soothsayers, and itinerant prophets, from Q to vaccine scientism to various forms of pseudo-Gnosticism centered around trans people. To a student of history, this should also be familiar and quite an ominous sign. France in the 1780s had its own scientism and mesmerism, and Russia in the 1910s and 80s was rife with soothsayers and itinerant preachers of strange new faiths. Most ominously of all, however, looms the growing supply crisis. This crisis would be tolerable if it merely implied a lack of variety at the grocery store. In such a case, 2020's America might have just ushered in a new golden age of Soviet-style political jokes. But it's also creating havoc in the productive economy itself, denying farmers the spare parts to run their harvesters, and car manufacturers the metals they need to make cars. The longer the crisis goes on, the more broken the economy will become, and the more painful the necessary reforms will be once America's elites truly wake up to the danger. And the best thing we can do to head all this off is to say goodbye sooner rather than later, and do it peacefully. The idea that they're going to roll in tanks just doesn't make any sense from any analysis of reality on this. You want to weigh in? You can do that here. Plus, coming up, we'll talk about the bankers. They've got themselves a plan to save green finance or something. Coming up.
Don't worry about things you can't control. Isn't that what they always say? But it's about impossible to avoid worrying about what's going on these days. The government has used the war on guns, the war on drugs, and the war on terrorism to tear our Bill of Rights to shreds. But you can fight back. The 10th Amendment Center has proven it, racking up major victories. For example, when the U.S. government claimed authority in the NDAA to have the military kidnap and detain Americans without trial, the nullifiers got a law passed in California, declaring the state's refusal to ever participate in any such thing. Their latest project is offnow.org, nullifying the National Security Agency. They've already gotten model legislation introduced in California, Arizona, Oklahoma, Missouri, and Kansas, meant to limit the power of the NSA to spy on Americans in those states. We'd be fools to wait around for the U.S. Congress or courts to roll back Big Brother. Our best chance is nullification and interposition on the state level. Go to offnow.org, print out that model legislation, and get to work nullifying the NSA. The hero Edward Snowden has risked everything to give us this chance. Let's take it. offnow.org.
The new 4th edition of Healing Our World, The Compassion of Libertarianism, will take your understanding of liberty to a deeper level and has over 1,300 updated references, new cartoons, and a foreword by Dr. Ron Paul. With discounts for multiple book purchases, the 4th edition of Healing Our World is a great gift for the liberals, pragmatists, environmentalists, and Christians in your life who think libertarianism is cold-hearted. Get yours today at healing.freetalklive.com and use promo code FTL for a $5 discount. There are lots of ways to listen to Free Talk Live. Our podcast has been around since podcasts began, and now the FTL feed is loaded with content besides our full show archives. Did you know that we make it easy for you to customize your podcast subscriptions? We have different feeds, one that includes only our full shows, one with just the Daily Digest, and our main feed that includes everything. You decide what you listen to. It's quick and easy to customize your feeds at feeds.freetalklive.com. That's feeds.freetalklive.com. Why did you move to the Shire?
I moved here to the Shire because there's other people around who take liberty just as seriously as I do.
I moved to the Shire because I saw videos of people challenging authority and thought that I could get support myself. It called to me, like, do this, right now.
I wanted to be around people like me who got it, and once I got here, I knew there was nowhere else that I wanted to be.
I've always wanted to change the world, so I moved to the Shire to join people who were actually working towards doing the same thing.
The people here are awesome, loving, and positive. It was for the adventure and for the feeling of something important is happening here, and I just wanted to come to sort of be part of that.
Visit ShireSociety.com to read and sign the Shire Society Declaration and learn the reasons why, if you love liberty, you should immigrate to the Shire. Plus, connect with others via the forum at ShireSociety.com. That's ShireSociety.com. What if you want to hear the latest episode of Free Talk Live, but all you have is your phone, you forgot to download our archive, and you have no data connection? You can call our Listen line at 641-793-0191. That's a long-distance number, so you may incur charges. If not, listen as long as you want. 641-793-0191. The Free Talk Live Listen line, 641-793-0191.
Are you tired of your taxes funding endless occupations around the world? Antiwar.com is run by people who understand that wars abroad become wars at home, wars on our freedoms. Antiwar.com is dedicated to bringing you the latest in news, views, interviews, and reviews from the top movers and shakers in the anti-occupation movement. Antiwar.com has it all, from thorough foreign policy analysis to interviews with whistleblowers who used to run the military-industrial complex. Anti-war, pro-free market. That's antiwar.com.
Our Matrix server is about as free as internet chat can be. Join the existing rooms or create your own at chat.freetalklive.com.
Free Talk Live. Yeah! You can join us here in the remaining moments. We've got enough time for you on this live Saturday show. Number 603-283-6160. Here tonight it's Ian.
And Peakless Mountaineer.
At 603-283-6160. Whether you want to talk about independence or dependence on things like the banking system, that's what we're going to get into coming up here. You can join us again, 603-283-6160, and join us online anytime over at freetalklive.com. You want to download archives. Of course, we have a podcast. You mentioned earlier how simple it is to get a podcast client or a podcatcher or whatever their terms are these days for them, an RSS reader. You can go to feeds.freetalklive.com and you'll find our main podcast and some alternatives there as well that you can subscribe to. One of them, for instance, has just the full episodes of the show. The other has just the digest episodes for those of you that are pressed for time and want just
the highlights of Free Talk Live. You can get all of those over at feeds.freetalklive.com, or just go to the front page of the site and download the latest shows right there from the little podcast widget that we have there. Just click the share button, and then the download link will appear. So it's super, super easy over at freetalklive.com. And Peakless Mountaineer, you had a story tonight.
Before we get into that second story, I just wanted to make a comment about the one that you just covered.
The Civil War.
Right. So I remember that the reason that we were putting up with all of the atrocities that were being done in the Middle East is fight them over there so that we don't fight them over here.
That's what they kept saying.
Right. Well, we're already here. Let us go so you don't have to fight us here. Just seems to me, seems to me a nice, reasonable thing to do. Like, if you're willing to put up with all of this, how about being willing to put up with us leaving so that you don't have to fight anyone here?
Right, because why do you want to keep fighting with the other side, whatever that side is? And now we're not on either the right or the left here on Free Talk Live, which is why we want libertarians to move to New Hampshire so libertarians can have their own place. I think it was Jeremy Kaufman from the Free State Project who was pointing out that actually what the Free State Project is doing, which is trying to migrate libertarians to New Hampshire, is actually good for the authoritarians. Like, we're helping each other now. And the point of this is it's good for the authoritarians in the other 49 states because the freedom people are leaving those places. The best activists are leaving.
That implies we were effective before.
Well, we weren't that effective before. But that said, not having freedom people in those places makes them that much more effective. Whatever, that is. They're more
Near
effective.
Zero.
They're more effective now, though, because, they don't have to oppose us. They don't have to argue with us. They don't have to, do anything because the freedom people are leaving those places. The best of the best are moving to New Hampshire. And so we're becoming almost, now I'm not going to say unstoppable yet, but we're definitely a force to be reckoned with here in New Hampshire, and they hate it. So all they have to do is move into any one of other 49 states that will be much more to their liking, and some of them are very much more to their liking. And so it's a simple move for them, and it's an easy move for us. So everybody benefits from this arrangement of seeking a better place, of seeking a place that's full of people that are like you.
I mean, let's face it. The idea of California and Texas being the same place is insane. And no one wants that. The people in California don't want to be attached at the hip to Texas. The people in Texas don't want to be attached at the hip to California.
Right.
So let's let them knock it off.
Right. And the same thing's true with the righties and the lefties. A lot of people, when they hear California is talking about independence, a lot of people on the right, they get it. They're like, okay, great. Go.
Right.
And the same thing should be said from the people on the left about the people on the right going to Texas and seceding from the United States. Awesome. Yeah. You don't want to have to live with those people, right?
Yeah.
I don't.
Yeah, I don't want to be attached to either of those people.
Exactly.
Let's have our place, they'll have their place, and they'll have their place. And we'll all just get to live with the people we want to live with. What a wild idea.
And we'll just it'll be so much more peaceful. Of course, then we'll find other things to disagree with each other on. But as you said, then we'll split ways from the limited government guys, and it'll be limited government versus...
We'll disagree in a much less violent way that way.
Yeah, I think so. They won't be as fundamental.
When you're trying to take the reins of power in politics, it's violence.
Yes.
And it's a violent way to disagree with each other.
Yeah, it's a threat.
When we don't have to do that anymore, then we can disagree with each other peacefully. Wouldn't that be nice?
Yeah, I don't want to be saddled with all of those people's issues and all of their demands, and they don't want to be saddled with us either. So let's just agree to disagree and go our separate ways.
Yep.
In peace. So with that in mind, Peakless, you've got another story for tonight. This one's about bankers and green finance.
Yep. This is from unlimitedhangout.com. Alliance.
Sounds like all the bad things together.
Yeah, Alliance announces quote-unquote green plan to transform the global financial system. So there was this meetup, the COP26, and most of the people talking about this are really hung up on very minor details. And no one seems to be taking in the big picture of, like, this is a move toward total global control. So let's go ahead and talk about that part.
Yeah, what are they proposing here?
So the most powerful private financial interests in the world, under the cover of the COP26, have developed a plan to transform the global financial system by fusing with institutions like the World Bank and using them to further erode national sovereignty in the developing world.
Lovely.
Yeah. On Wednesday, a quote-unquote industry-led and UN-convened, unquote, alliance of private banking and financial institutions announced plans at the COP26 conference to overhaul the role of global and regional financial institutions, including the World Bank and IMF. That's International Monetary Fund, as part of a broader plan to quote-unquote transform the global financial system.
Okay, but what does that actually mean?
Well, so this whole thing where we have all of these different countries having different rules, where maybe they actually listen to the people in their region from time to time to figure that out, nah, no more of that.
They want banking rules to be set from the top down?
Absolutely. Okay. I mean, global climate change is a global problem with a global governance solution.
Yeah, I'm not really sure what climate change has anything to do with international banking.
Well, basically it comes down to, if we can stop you from spending your money in bad ways, then we can cut your carbon emissions.
All right, tell me more.
Let's see. The officially stated purpose of this proposed overhaul, per alliance members, is to promote the transition to a quote-unquote net zero economy. That's a net zero carbon emissions. Because, yeah, that's ever happened. I mean, since man figured out fire, he has been producing carbon. So, yeah, good luck, guys. However, the group's proposed reimagining of the international financial institutions, according to their recently published progress report, would also move to merge these institutions with the private banking interests that compose the alliance. Create new system of global financial governance, quote unquote.
That sounds scary.
Yeah, it rather does. It's not a global government, it's just global financial governance. Totally different. It's totally different. And erode the national sovereignty among developing countries by forcing them to establish business environments deemed quote-unquote friendly to the interests of the alliance members. In other words, the powerful banking interests that compose the group are pushing to recreate the entire global financial system for their benefit under the guise of promoting sustainability.
Sure. Yeah, they're just painting the word green on whatever sort of total financial dominion plan that they've got.
And that's the thing. I mean, this is announcement time, basically. So any of the people who've been like, no, you're a crazy conspiracy theorist, they'll never be doing that, they'll never institute a global banking control structure. No, they're announced
talking
it.
about it, yeah.
Like, they announced it. They came out on COP26. We, the bankers, are going to save the world from you dirty polluters who just think you can spend your money any which way you feel like.
Oh, and of course they're going to trot out this ridiculous claim about Bitcoin being so bad for the environment, right? Oh, it takes so much energy to mine Bitcoin. We've got to stop Bitcoin to save the environment.
Yeah, to save the environment, we've got to make sure that we can keep fueling the largest polluter on the planet, the U.S. military-industrial complex.
Sure. Yep.
We've got to make sure that we can keep firing those depleted uranium rounds into whichever place we feel like, anytime we like.
Now, of course, the banks aren't going to propose shutting off their own lights and turning off their own computers because, you know, if you add up the total number of computers and overhead lights and all the things that power the banking industry, every ATM machine, all their BS, that's way more than the power consumption of all cryptocurrencies combined.
By far. Yeah. And people will say, but yours is exponentially growing. Have you noticed that our warfare state is also exponentially growing?
Cryptocurrency is the way out of this. This is the only way to avoid this global financial catastrophe that is coming and avoid pouring more of your wealth into the violent governments of the world. We're out of time for tonight. You can join us between now and tomorrow night online over at freetalklive.com.
I'm a little obsessed with My Magic Mud. Several years ago, I met Jessica Armand, the founder and CEO of My Magic Mud, and I didn't even know my teeth were coffee stained. A week's worth of use convinced me, and now I use it every 3 or 4 days. It's clinically proven to whiten teeth, and I think it cleans better, too. My Magic Mud's available at most local health food stores, Sprouts, Natural Grocers, CVS, Walmart's Natural Beauty Aisle, but I can get it for you for 20% off with coupon code FTL20 at mymagicmud.com. FTL20 mymagicmud.com.
When a lunar observatory detects a radio broadcast originating from Proxima Centauri, the nations of Earth discover their first contact with an alien race may also be their last. With the Proximans facing an extinction-level disaster, Earth must choose between sending a ship on a multi-year journey or allowing nature to take its course. Saving Proxima, a hard science fiction thriller by Travis S. Taylor and Les Johnson from BaneBooks.com.
There are basically 2 types of advertising, direct response and branding. Radio's great for direct response with its low cost to listener ratio, but audio can't be beat for branding, which is a longer-term endeavor. You want to be the first thing that someone thinks of when they think about your product or service. If you have a local business that you want kept top of mind in your community, call the station. If you need national reach, Free Talk Live's got around 200 radio stations, millions of monthly listening sessions, can suit all budgets, and if we don't think we're right for you, we'll tell you. Email me, mark@freetalklive.com.
Tired of cancel culture? Sick of mega tech corporations holding an axe over your head? Join the LRN.FM Matrix chat server. It's self-hosted, so no one else can tell us what to do or say. Don't like the existing channels? You can make your own. You can even connect into some of our channels from other Matrix servers. It's federated. For the full LRN.FM Matrix experience, though, you should join our server via the step-by-step instructions at chat.lrn.fm. Chat.lrn.fm.
This is the Liberty Radio Network, broadcasting the latest liberty-oriented audio content 24 hours a day at LRN.FM.
From Feature Story News in Washington, I'm Simon Marks with the Week in Review, and the week ended with efforts underway to try and save the COP26 climate summit in Glasgow after activists outside the conference and Prime Minister Boris Johnson inside it spent the week warning it was not accomplishing enough. The Prime Minister returned to Scotland in the middle of the week to urge nations to be bolder than the